board meeting, we do a book study. Yes, we still do book studies, so just so you know, we do them in school, but we're always learning. So we have a book here. It's called How Not to Be a Terrible School Board Member. And so, little tongue-in-cheek, as Mr. Tenney says, but we've got 2 chapters that we're going to review for 15 minutes, and then we'll go into our regular board meeting. So, Mr. Tenney?
Okay, great. Now we've got a lot of guests here for some fun parts of the evening and some interesting parts of the evening. This is, one of the, we just do this because it's a good thing to do, parts of the evening. So we'll do this really quick. The 2 kind of chapters or habits that we read this time, you might recall, were terrible habit number 5 and number 6. Number 5 is one of my favorites. And the terrible habit is never question the administration. So, of course, the implication is that you should be asking questions of the administration with some regularity. But does anybody, I just read this myself a couple of days, reread it myself a couple of days ago. Is there anybody who's read it recently enough that they could kind of summarize the scenario that we're looking at for us?
I did. I read it yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's, the board member has listened to a presentation, had some questions come up, but realized nobody else seemed concerned or had any questions and felt like they just needed to move on and move the meeting along. And so instead of asking questions, they instead moved on.
Just to say, well, okay, it's probably not a big deal, right? And if I'm remembering correctly, the board member had even questions in advance as they read over the agenda prior to a couple of days before, right? I think you maybe mentioned that, Jen, that they had a handful of, what about this and what about this? And it wasn't like, coming from a place of suspicion and I'm going to find out what they're doing wrong kind of a thing. It was like legitimate questions about, I'm not really sure how this works, and yet chose not to bring those up. So, yeah, and the book is suggesting that's a terrible habit to just let that opportunity go by. The 4 options that it gives, right, for each of these is kind of a choose your own adventure thing, right? Here's the scenario. What should you have done? One is kind of what the person chose, and it's what you just mentioned, Jen. Don't waste everyone's time with naive questions. The board meeting needs to move along efficiently. Maybe something to part of that, but the other part, probably not. Ask any questions you have after the meeting or during a break later in the meeting. Okay, 3rd option. Ask your questions directly of the superintendent or the maintenance and operations director, who is the person giving the presentation in this scenario, before the meeting, either by phone or by email. That's one of the options. And the last one is ask your questions at the meeting until you're fully satisfied that you understand what you're voting on. And the book suggested that which of these is the best option?
3 or 4.
Yeah. And I personally would agree. 3 was what again, that you could do? You could ask in advance. There's nothing wrong with that. Getting all the information you need and saying, okay. It did suggest in number 3, you might want to make sure your questions and answers are shared with all the board members before the meeting as well, and that they become part of the public record. That can absolutely be done. The times that I've seen things, go the best, I've kind of been on the other side of the dais a little bit when I was on the city council, is if I had questions and I asked in advance that I felt confident in my mind, I knew what we were voting on and had the details, but then sometimes I would let our staff members know, hey, I'm going to ask about this during our meeting as well, just so people get that same information, because I think it's important for that to come out. Again, not in a gotcha kind of a way, certainly not in a last minute, let's see if you have this information, these details, this data at your fingertips kind of a way, but just like bring that up. Or like you say, you could just ask, and one of the things I liked, ask yourself, what would your constituents ask? What do people want to know about this? Not, the 6 people that I spend the most time with, or the people who are, poking at us the most, or the people who are happy with everything that we do all the time, no matter what. But, a typical person out there, what would they want to know about this? Those are reasonable things to ask. Thoughts about this one? Anything else that jumped out at people?
I thought it was kind of, human nature almost. This one, and we read a previous chapter, the fact that sometimes you do hold back questions because either you're reading a room or you don't feel comfortable in answering the questions, and we do it in school. Growing up, I probably did my homework the night before, and I have a ton of questions, but I don't feel very comfortable even asking the question. But in this one, and what I highlighted was your job as a school board member is to ask questions, even naive ones, on behalf of the community. So a lot of times we do ask questions, and the fact that we may know an answer, but we need everybody else to kind of hear it. And I think we're all really good at that and just bringing it out. and nobody gets called out, just, you know, we need to have the information out there, really for the public's knowledge more than anything, and ours, because we're not very smart, right? I'm just kidding.
You're pretty smart.
Anyway.
How would it work on, make sure your questions and answers are shared with all the board members before the meeting? That's the one thing that,
That's what I underlined as well.
yeah, that's the one that
Sure.
kind of caught me is with open meeting laws and things.
Yeah, good question. For open meeting law purposes, you probably wouldn't want to do that directly. Email the other 4 board members and say, hey, I just talked with Sarah, or I talked with Brian, or I talked with Clark, and this is what I found out, you guys. But you might ask one of us after the conversation, hey, that's important information. I think maybe other board members would be interested. Would you be willing to share that out? And that can certainly be done.
So is that, as long as it doesn't become a discussion amongst board members, that's okay? Is that kind of the
So if you're-
approach that?
Basically, the basic principle I think we've talked about a lot of times is the public's business needs to be done in public. Right?
Right.
So if you're not conducting business, if you're asking for information to be shared with people, particularly if you're not doing that yourself. And as far as you contact 2 other board members about things, you're maybe moving into a gray area, particularly if you start to share opinions about things that are going to be agendized and voted on later, is my understanding of things. So it's not necessarily an open meeting law violation to share an email with other people, but probably best, like we talked about, to maybe ask one of the staff to share out that information. Yeah, good question. That's kind of my thought. Any other thoughts around that?
No, that was the one thing that I underlined as well, is I wasn't sure about how that would be shared with all the board members. And then the other thing I underlined was, I thought it was very simple, but it was that, remember, you are simply doing the people's work, which I thought, and we all need to be crystal clear before we vote on an issue. And if it means we might ask questions that seem a little bit silly, or like we don't quite know what we're talking about, there's somebody else that probably has the same
Yeah,
question.
yep.
Just like school, where you wouldn't ask the question because you knew that you were the only one that had it. In actual fact, everybody had that question, but
There you go.
didn't want to ask it.
And each one of these has a superintendent's lessons learned section, and the things that I underlined were, an ideal situation is to have a board that seeks to be well-informed and deliberative in all its decisions. I've been really pleased the last few months to feel like, boy, that's exactly the scenario that we've got. And then the other thing I underlined, a good question or 2 might even result in improving a recommended course of action. The thing that came to mind immediately for me, we've probably had more situations like this, but when our leadership team brought to you a few months ago our mission statement that we'd spent a lot of time and effort on, followed a pattern that you'd asked us to follow, and there were some thoughts around, maybe this could be even better, and could we table this and bring it back? And absolutely, and I feel like we got more board involvement from that, and you kind of put your own fingerprints on that. We came up with a better product as a result of asking some good questions. And just like it says, a good question or 2 might even result in improving a recommended course of action. That's exactly what happened. Anything else on that one? Okay, so terrible habit number 6, solicit complaints from teachers or staff. So they're saying you probably shouldn't be doing that. Who remembers the scenario here?
I remember this one.
Okay.
So a new board member decided he wanted to go on a listening tour. And I made appointments with all the schools.
Was it saying that that's a bad idea?
No, I wasn't saying
Not
that was
at all.
bad.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
But I think what happened is the discussions kind of spiraled out of control, and they became negative, and they became critical of principals and administrators, and then the board member was stuck, and it turned into a witch hunt, and it wasn't good.
And yeah, that's essentially correct. I thought it was interesting and kind of cool that this person started with the same really great idea that Brett and Jen had recently, which was, is there a way we could get around to each school and have an opportunity to meet with each of the staff members there? And so you spent a considerable amount of time doing that at each of our sites, and at least from the feedback I got from you and from others, certainly didn't devolve into just a complaint session about, hey, this needs to be fixed and whatnot. Nothing wrong with people sharing concerns, of course, but if it becomes exclusively that, and this board member, I think, and maybe it's one of the bad ideas for how to approach this, or maybe it was within the scenario itself, said, yeah, I'll get right on that, I'll fix that for you. That's probably not the best response to things initially before you find out more. Good. So the four options, right? It does say a personal connection with teachers is important. It's important to hear what's bothering them, but somehow your meeting got out of control and degenerated, like you said, blah, blah, blah. So appropriate course of action, don't have a lunch with teachers. You need to keep your distance as a board member. Good idea or bad idea? That's a bad idea, right? That's the opposite is true. I think in as far as you've got good personal connections with employees of the district, that helps you make better decisions. That's great. Invite the principal to have lunch with you. That way you can resolve any complaints about her face to face. So, you know, your 5 or 6, you had invited staff members in this scenario, I think, right, to come meet with you in the cafeteria. There was actually quite a bit of complaint about cafeteria lunches, which is unfounded, I think. At any rate, get the principal there, because you know there's going to be complaints. Let's just complain right to him or her to his face, and we'll fix that up. Probably not a good idea, right? Have lunch only with union representatives, so they can tell you the way that is, and you can fix things there. They said that's probably not your best move either. Now the other one was to do what? Who remembers the fourth one?
Keep it focused on productive exchange of information.
Yeah. And Jen and Brett, would you say that was by and large the case for your meetings?
Yes,
with people?
definitely. It was very, I mean, even things that weren't necessarily positive, like that they had things that they were concerned about, it wasn't ever brought out negatively about individual people or anything like that. It was really good. But one thing they pointed out too is that the board member said, your principal's not with us, and I can assure I will keep anything you say confidential. And so that invites that kind of conversation where that's for sure not what we had said. Most of our principals did choose not to stay with us in the room, just to allow for more freedom of communication, but it certainly wasn't communicated that way, that you can't be here or that they're not here intentionally, so.
Great. Anything else about this one that jumped out to
No,
people?
I would just say
Good advice?
it's not our job to become a mediator
Okay.
between teachers and administrators. That's not our job.
There you go.
So
Yeah, and I
we need
think
to be tactful, we need to be delicate, we need to be able to try to read what, because I do go to lunch occasionally at Viet Jet and
Yeah,
just hang
yeah,
out in the
yeah.
staff room. But you just have to be really careful about what you say and how you say it and what you're asking of them.
And that's where I think the first option does have some value to it. I don't think you have to keep your distance from, as a board member. It doesn't mean be aloof and not speak to the teachers, but you do have to recognize what's an appropriate conversation and interaction to have in that setting. So there is some distance that you need to have in that relationship.
Good. Any other takeaways from this one? These are pretty easy. And I think for the most part, I'll say it again, I think our board is exemplary in kind of driving inside the lines, so to speak, on most of what's recommended here. Doesn't mean just because it's in the book we have to do that, but I think in general there's probably a pretty good consensus that much of what's suggested here is something that would be beneficial to us. All right, very good.
All right, so we have 2 minutes, so if you want to take a quick break, we will start promptly at 5:15. Okay. Our PUSD Governing Board meeting for April 1st, 2025. Carly, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is item 3, approval of the agenda. I would like to make one change to this. I'd like to switch item 5B and 5A. So we'll bring all the winter sports athletes and coaches up first, and then Madam Cherry, if we could have you second. Okay, thank you. All right. So I would like to consider a motion with the change.
I make a motion to allow that change to occur.
A motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion second, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 4, 4A, approval of the minutes. So these are considering the approval of minutes for the following PUSD Governing Board meetings. The February 28, 2025 Governing Board Retreat and Working Meeting. The March 4th, 2025 Governing Board Study Session Meeting and Book Study. The March 4th, 2025 Governing Board Regular Study and Voting Session Meeting. And the March 10th, 2025 Governing Board Special Meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, do second.
I'll second.
Motion second, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Presentations. All right, we're gonna do item 5B. So Winter Sports Challenge. If all of the coaches and athletes can kind of migrate all around this back area here.
Most of our crowd.
So first of all, we just want to thank all of you. First, the coaches for all your hard work, your time that you put in. We know it's not just the season, the winter season, but we recognize it's all year long. Obviously, you have other jobs as well. All of you are volunteer coaches as well. You have other jobs, so we really do appreciate all that you're doing. And to the athletes, what a winter season. I mean, all of you guys went really far, had tremendous wins. I mean, the crowds that we saw in the gym and on the fields were unbelievable. So to see it on the television, you know, it was televised through the Arizona Sports Network. I mean, just amazing accomplishments that you did. And we look forward to just seeing what you guys all do in the future, not just within sports, but academics and then obviously in your careers. So we just want to give you a little token of appreciation for the board. This is our board coin, and we like to give each one of you and this coin, give you a coin. But this coin starts back, it has a military back history, and it basically started from a French term called esprit de corps, which means fellowship. So this fellowship that you create among athletes, we like to be a part of it. So we want to show our appreciation, and this esprit de corps by presenting you these coins. So each one of you will receive a coin tonight.
I'm sorry.
So coaches, we also have bags here for any athletes that weren't here tonight. Please, if you could make sure they get them, and again, thank them. So, well, we'll give them to the coaches.
Boys basketball, boys basketball, girls
Well, thank you all, appreciate it. Sir, we gotta get this picture. Can I do this with Phil? Thanks, everybody. You don't have to stay for the long one meeting.
Scan if you want, but you don't need
It's hot back there. A lot of bodies. Oh, I love that. That's awesome. That was a great winter season.
it. It was. Absolutely was.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to item 5A. Madame Cherry, you have the podium. Thanks for waiting.
No, that was neat to see. So I'm here to present, we have 3 of our Interact students have been selected to go on the Interact Ambassadors trip. This is our 7th and 8th students from PHS who have been chosen to go to Kenya, and our fifth student chosen to go to Mexico. So we're just here to, I guess, essentially ask for your blessing. And we've got some pictures of past trips. I've been on both of these trips if you have any questions about it. The primary focus is enabling the disabled. So the Kenya trip, they distribute used mobility devices that we have collected throughout northern Arizona, all these schools in the whole northern half of the state. And then the kids who go to Mexico work with this amazing group called ALEM, which is a group of wheelchair repair experts, and probably 75% of the people in the group also are wheelchair users. So they go out into like the plaza of the city that they visit. They travel all over Mexico, and they collect wheelchairs from people whose chairs need repair, and they fix them, and then the next day they can come and pick up the chair. But it's really cool. I mean, it's total disassembly, replacing upholstery. The kids learn a ton. So that's what the 2 trips are about. And it's the Interact Club, and it's sponsored by Rotary. So the kids pay a small fee. I think it's about $1,000 per kid this year, and then Rotary covers the rest. And we're also doing fundraisers if you're interested.
Which I have.
Yes, Carly is involved.
So if you want to buy some to support the people going on our trips, I have a lot more where this came from.
Yeah. And that's for the Colt Grill. We're doing a fundraiser with them. So you buy a ticket and essentially get to go through the buffet line, and we get a portion of the proceeds. So.
Nice.
Any questions?
I had one quick one. The repair of the wheelchairs fascinates me. How do the kids know, how are they educated on how to fix a wheelchair, and where do the supplies come from?
So the Rotary in the, like the
take them with you.
Cuernavaca or whatever local
Got
Rotary
it.
Club
Okay.
pays for the parts and pays the employees of the organization. And the people who need the repair pay a very minimal fee. I don't know what it is, maybe $10 or something. But the training is all just right then. And last year when I went on the trip, I was the translator for, which is hilarious because I don't really speak Spanish. But this year, at least 2 of the kids that are going are Spanish speakers, so they're going to be able to help facilitate that. But it's a lot of, pointing and demonstration and that type of thing. So it's a lot of laughs. This group is like, if you've been to Seattle to the fish market, they're a lot like that group. So there's a lot of singing and yelling and just, breaking out in song in random moments and stuff. Really fun.
Super cool. And I'm assuming this is all covered through Rotary?
Yes.
That they cover the costs. Do the students stay with families on their trips? Or how does that work?
Usually the Kenya group does, and they stay with Rotarians who have volunteered their space. The Mexico team usually stays in hotels.
Okay.
Kathleen, so the 3 that were chosen, what's the process of them? Is there an application?
Yes, there's an application. There's an interview with a team of Rotarians, and then they're selected. I mean, it's a very simple process, really. So they need to have some kind of, they have to write a few essays on the application and have some leadership skills. Those are things that they're looking for. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Parents sign off on it and all kinds. Yeah.
So just, maybe this is that naive question, but since this is the PHS, the Prescott High School Interact Club, and it's sponsored, this trip is sponsored through Rotary, is there any requirement that we approve these trips as a board, or that, does the district have liability at all in this with sending students that are part of our PHS Interact Club?
That's a good question. In the past, when we've had kids go overseas, we haven't, this is not on the agenda as a voting item tonight for you to approve it. It's a presentation about recent activities that they've done in the Interact Club in general and kind of what's coming up, but we'll certainly get this on an ensuing board agenda so that we can do that. In the past, because it's a school-sponsored activity, we've asked for board approval on it, and I think we probably would this time as well.
But we're not voting on that tonight?
Not this evening, yeah. We haven't placed it on the agenda as a voting item. Don't know that we've got the dates even and whatnot, so we'll.
No, dates will be forthcoming.
Yeah, we'll work with Kathleen when we get all the information that we need to present it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Do that one more time, but yeah, you got a good heads up here, and
Yeah.
a lot of runway if you have questions about it
Yeah.
between now and then.
All right.
Hang on.
Anything else? Oh, no.
So when we were going through our board packet, I saw that there was a vacancy for a French teacher and an AP psych teacher.
Yes.
And obviously that's you. And so you are retiring.
Yes.
And how long you been with the district?
Clark, when did we start?
I think this is our 18th year.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, and my story, obviously I've known you a long time.
Yeah.
And your husband was my high school hero. He was a senior. We know all this, state champion in the hurdles, and obviously you kept on winning because he married you, right?
Oh,
So we just want to present you at the point too,
thank
as a
you.
thanks. You're the best.
Fantastic. That is great. That is great.
She'll be greatly missed.
Kathleen, thank you for that. Thanks for everything you do with the kids in the Interact Club, and boy, it'd be interesting. Have you had a chance to count up all the lives that you've touched over the last 18 years?
It's weird. I've gotten all these messages, like just random emails from
Sure.
past students. So I don't know if it's like in the grapevine or what, but it's really touching.
Yeah.
Very bittersweet.
Pretty neat. 120 to 150 kids probably every year for years and years and years just in your classes. Then the club opportunities, you did academic decathlon for a long time, Interact Club for the last several years.
Fulbright scholar.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You've touched a lot of lives. Thank you for everything you do. stuff, pretty neat.
All right, moving on to item 5C, ASBA Policy Services presentation. We have Justin Rice and Lynn Bondi.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having us. That is really hard to follow. Yeah, I think we should just sit down now. But congratulations, you stepped out. Well, okay, fair enough. We won't do that anymore. But I have to say, when I first entered this room, I said, wow, this is a very small room. This is cozy. Well, now I understand why. And that's because this is a family. And I can tell you right now, just upon walking into this room and just upon sitting with you for 15, 20 minutes, I can see this is a very special place. And I very much appreciate that. And I very much appreciate you allowing us to come and speak with you a little bit this evening. My name is Justin Rice. I am the Executive Director of the Arizona School Boards Association. I began my term at the end of September, so don't throw anything at me yet. I'm still getting warmed up. But one thing that I can say is that ASBA has been through some difficult times. And that is not something that we hide. That is not something that we don't own up to. That's not something that we don't speak about. One thing that I always tell my staff is that we won't trip over what's behind us. That doesn't mean we don't acknowledge it. We own it. But we're moving forward. And we're learning the very important lessons that came along with some of the things that happened prior to my start here. One thing, too, that I'd like to share with you is also something that we share among staff, and this is true of our board as well, and that's an acronym that we started about the beginning of October. And that acronym is ACT, Accountability, Collaboration, and Transparency. This is how we act moving forward. And this is something that's been very important to us, and we truly do live it. And why do I mention this, and why do I share this? I share this with everyone who will listen. Because if we are not acting with accountability, collaboration, and transparency, I need to know about that. Because that is what our commitment is to our members. We know that there are other options out there, and we are blessed to have you as our members. And more importantly than that, it's very important that we meet our expectations of our members, which sometimes you might feel surveyed to death, and I apologize for that. But we absolutely want to make sure that we are always on top of our game as much as we possibly can. And if there are things that we need to know about, things that we need to improve on, then we need to have a meeting about that, and we need to start putting a game plan in place to ensure that we're meeting those needs, we're meeting those expectations. And I can certainly talk about those awkward conversations, just like we talked about in your book study. And that's okay. There are no naive questions. We'll absolutely answer anything that you need to know, even if it's just for the good of the order. We find that very, very important. It's also important that we know what your perspectives are, not only on how we're doing, but how we can help. That is what we are here to do. That is our commitment to you as your membership organization. So without that, I appreciate you indulging me the time. So we'll talk a little bit about our policy services. I will be teaming off here with Lynn Bondi, who is our policy analyst, and we got a special surprise. We also have Dr. Charlotte Patterson here, who's also a policy analyst. So the really exciting thing about this is that you are seeing all three faces that if you need policy services, if you give us a call, you shoot us an email, these are the people that you are now talking to. So like I said, now it's nice to be able to have the opportunity to put some faces to names. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Lynn, and she'll begin the presentation, and then we'll kind of tag in and out. So if you have any questions, of course, please feel free to stop us, or we're happy to answer any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Well, good evening, board and Superintendent Tenney, Ms. Torres, and Cabinet. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and answer any questions, like Justin says, and highlight all the ways we support you. And do I just click this, Sarah? We did not, I did not practice ahead of time. So as it says on the slide, we are here in service for you. So that means continuing to provide nonpartisan policies that are in compliance with state and federal law, agency rules, and legal opinions, to provide up-to-date policy advisories and alerts throughout the year, And just to clarify the difference between a policy advisory and a policy alert, a policy advisory is one that directly impacts your policy documents, whereas an alert is information that doesn't necessarily impact your policy documents, but it's information we feel that you should be aware of. For example, we sent the policy alert recently on teacher contracts, and that on or after March 15th date. And so again, that statutory March 15th date wasn't in any of your policy documents, but it was important information, especially this time of year. So when you're getting an alert, we like to think of it as an FYI. Doesn't necessarily impact your policy documents, but we want you to know about it. We also offer a complimentary employee handbook that's compliance focused, it's customizable, and it's aligned with your policy manual, and your district currently has that. We also offer unrestricted, like Justin was talking about, on-call consultation for board members, for superintendents, for administrative professionals. And I always like to say we don't start a timer when you're calling. And Shar and I sometimes it's on speaker and it's going on hours, but we are committed to listening and making sure we understand you and that we can provide you the information that you need, however long it takes. So wanted to mention that. We also provide policy amendment assistance at no additional cost because we want your policy documents to reflect your local needs. And so if you want us to help you craft a policy, if you want us to give you samples on a policy that you're looking to add to your policy manual. I'm a former English teacher. If you're looking for me to edit one of your policy documents, I do that a lot. So you're always welcome to have us assist you in that process. We also network with the American Association of State Policy Services, so that is a great group of legal and policy experts, and we collaborate with them quite a bit on this national level. So that is also a great resource that we have at our fingertips that, like I said, we utilize quite a bit. They ask for our feedback, we ask for theirs, so it's a great collaboration that we have with them. We also offer policy queue assistance, policy bridge queue assistance. So that means you can be as hands-on or hands-off as you want when processing your documents through policy bridge. Now, I know Sarah is quite skilled in processing your documents through policy bridge, but this is an option if you want to say, hey, here's our adoption dates, you handle it. That's an option that we can take care of for you. We also offer a complimentary, comprehensive policy review, and our objectives are on the screen. When we do a comprehensive policy review, we want to make sure that your policies are aligned with your practices, of course, that everything's in compliance. And we are also looking to locate any internal or external conflicts that you have in your policy manual. So we're checking for a myriad of items as we review your documents, because if there are issues with any of those, we want to make sure that they're addressed right away so you can focus on what truly matters, like your athletes and giving them the coins and recognizing your stellar teachers. So those kind of things. So we like to dig in and really help you with that policy manual that maybe you haven't updated in a while, or you need that policy review. So here's a sample of what that looks like. So to accomplish those goals, Shar and I look at every document in your policy manual, and then we compile our pre-analyses on a spreadsheet, which we send to the superintendent in advance. Before we ever set foot, they already know the things that we are looking for, because we want everything to be very, very clear. So the spreadsheet has the policy information, it has any policy advisories that are associated with that policy document. Again, that third column or fourth column is my pre-analyses that help guide us as we're navigating the policy manual. If there's something that's not on there that you want to discuss, we can definitely discuss that. Again, this is just a guide. And then that last column is based on the actual discussion during the policy review. I also just want to point out that it's color-coded to go along with the comparison document, again, so everything is clear. So once I process everything through Policy Bridge, I send this spreadsheet, I send the comparison document of what your document looks like and our model document, and again, that's all color-coded. And then we also send a document that looks like this. So it's separated with, these are the policies that need to go to the board for the board to review. Then we separate the regulations and exhibits, that's for the superintendent's approval. And then the final document are any kind of documents that we discuss, but they're going to be retained as is, no changes. And we support you before, during, and after this policy review process, and we recommend it every 4 to 5 years. And again, it is complimentary service that we provide, so it's a great opportunity to dig in and look at every single document. So that's what that process looks like. We also publish, you probably saw that in January, our annual calendar of recommended and required actions. That's an additional resource we like to provide. And as far as Policy Bridge, we have over 200 policy manuals that you can access and search all together. So if you're looking for a particular topic, you can just type that in, and again, you have access to 200 manuals. So that's a great bank of documents that you have at your fingertips. As far as Policy Bridge, if you've seen that little globe, that's the globe function. And so what that does, if you click on that, it gives you the URL address for any policy document in your manual, so you can quickly send that or embed that as a link. We also have the download feature, and so that downloads all of the documents as Word documents, so then it's easy to customize. And then we also utilize the Google Translate feature, so anyone who views your policy documents can see those documents in over 100 languages. So we really like that feature as well. And most importantly, we listen to your feedback. So as you probably know, we are in the process of conducting a full review of our model manual, and we're sending that out in sections so that it's easy for you to manage. And this manual update is, I like to say, team effort of policy and legal experts, as well as district and educational leaders who are vetting each document before we send that section to you. So we've sent out sections A and B already. Section C is now in the hands of those educational and district leaders who are reviewing that and giving us their feedback. And I just want to say, during this process, Shar and I have also looked at other policy manuals, and we were very pleased to discover that our manual is more comprehensive, because our manual is focused on assisting districts with their governance and their operations. I always like to say we cast a wider net so that you make sure that you have the policies, the regulations, and exhibits that are going to best support your board's functions. For example, Section B that we recently sent out on board governance, that's very robust. And we do that on purpose because our thought process is what is going to be most important to you as to help you in your role. So we are really, really excited about this project that we're in the middle of. We're also upgrading Policy Bridge, our software platform, and so that we are starting this month. We're transitioning boards over to this upgrade. It has the latest technology. It has new features. One of the great new features, because you use Board Book, is that it interacts with Board Book. And so if you make a change to a policy, Sarah, are you listening? No. If you make a change to a policy in Board Book, it automatically populates in Policy Bridge. So that's a really nice feature. And then we will continue. We had a free training here last year, and we just loved you hosting us for that. And we'll continue to offer those free trainings to the super users and updated tutorials just so everything is clear with this new platform. So we're also excited about that. That's happening right now. We also send a monthly newsletter, Pulse on Policy, regarding all things policy to keep you updated on that. And we've recently created a listserv for our policy super users so that they have a space where they can ask questions, whether it's about Policy Bridge or it's just policy in general. So with that, I will hand it back over to Justin. And then again, if you have any questions, I'll tag team back with her.
So once we finish this, I am going to ask Lynn to come back up and talk a little bit about our process for reviewing policies. It is rather unique, and there really is a lot of wraparound support before we just go ahead and launch a policy or direction. So I hope that's okay. Okay, thank you. All right. So this slide actually does have a document that also supports it. And this is just a comparison that we've decided to put together in terms of the services, policy services that ASBA offers. And then there are other providers out there, as you know. And so in comparing some of the things that we offer and then doing our due diligence to see, well, what are the other providers offering? You know, what does that look like? How can we do a direct comparison? And unfortunately, a lot of that is unknown. So I will just run through this very quickly, but policy updates, advisories, and alerts, as Lynn just spoke about, included and provided throughout the year. Policy update assistance included and customizable to you. Policy manual reviews also included. Employee handbook services included and customizable. In-person and remote trainings, webinars, tutorials, and instruction included and also customizable. Board member trainings included and customizable. Super user trainings and listserv also included. On-call consultation with dedicated staff. So that's when we talked about, you give us a call, you give us a ring, and you know exactly who you're going to be speaking with. Whether it's myself, Dr. Patterson, Lynn, these are the people that are going to be answering your phone. The other thing, too, is that we try to stick within a 4-hour response time. Usually it's right away. But that is our commitment, is to be very quick and timely with you. Of course, sometimes weekends, but it's not unheard of that we won't respond during weekends too. We're just committed to being committed. But anyway, so I just want to let you know that we are always at the ready to assist you. Discounted board doc fees. You guys do obviously subscribe to board docs, and we do actually we've negotiated a discounted fee, so that is less expensive for you. I'm sorry. Oh, board docs. Sorry about that. And then the cost. So fully transparent with no hidden fees. We will tell you exactly what it's going to cost. And there are no adjustments. There are no hidden fees, no secret services or anything like that. What you pay for is exactly what you see. And the other thing, too, like I said, is all policy services are provided by dedicated ASBA staff in collaboration with legal counsel at no additional cost to members. So when I bring up legal counsel, I'll have Lynn talk about what exactly that means in terms of how we go ahead and review our policies and ensure that they are ready for you. The other thing, too, that I just wanted to mention is that we are big believers in professional development. We are always trying to stay on top of everything to be the go-to resource. And we can't be the go-to resource if we don't know exactly what's going on and being timely about that. Bright and early tomorrow morning, I am heading out to Atlanta. I'm kind of doing a round trip here. I was just there a couple weeks ago to attend the Consortium of School Board Attorneys. So I will be personally attending that. For those of you, I know you're jealous. I know you're jealous. But anyway, that's my professional development as well, is to be able to go out, see what's happening around the nation, things like that, so that I can bring those things back to policy services, back to our government relations department, which I'm also running at this time, so that we can continue to provide you with those good works. A couple of other things just quickly, in addition to our policy alerts, we do frequently publish just summaries and then also just some guidance in terms of ICE. That was a big one, immigration. That was one where we've certainly collaborated with the governor's office, we've collaborated with the attorney general's office, and being able to provide some of those, just best practices with related to ICE. That's also supported by items in your policy manual. So we were able to bring those things sort of, into a well-rounded situation so that you were able to see that. The other one, too, that we just recently opined on was the Dear Colleague letter from the Office of Civil Rights. So that was certainly another one that we're keeping abreast of. We're also in contact, and this is something that'll be very specific to my trip to Atlanta, is getting some direct guidance and some explanation about the dissolution of the Department of Education. I know we have a lot of questions there, particularly what happens to student loans, what happens to finances, what happens to IDEA, some very important things. So we're going to be really happy to bring back to you once I return next week. All right. And as I said, we have provided an additional document that supports this, and it's essential questions to ask when you're considering policy service providers. So don't worry about asking the naive questions. We've listed 20 of them for you, and they are not naive, but just to help you dig a little deeper. Sometimes when you receive a presentation, that's what we're here for. We're here to make it quick, here to make it look good, all those fun things, but there are certainly a deeper dive that you're entitled to. And that's why we put this document together, so that we have the questions that you may want to ask. And like I said, we encourage that. And like I said, in absolutely any of those questions, you're welcome to ask us. So, it's all fair game. Okay. Let me see if I can screw this up. Okay. And this is just a quick example of some of those questions. So what does the policy manual review process entail, and what is the typical timeline, and is our cost? How does your organization stay current with changing education legislation and regulations? If any, what startup fees are required? Beyond any startup fees, if required, how is the cost of your service determined for our district? Will we see an increase in the cost of service year over year? And 4, what kind of direct support is provided for developing unique district policies? What does that look like? If it's an additional service, what is the cost? Like I said, I think we're all very cognizant of budgets. We know that these are very tight budgets. I know Brian's looking at me right now going, amen, sister. We know how tight these budgets are, and we know how challenging it is for districts, and we just want to ensure that you're offered the best supports possible for the most reasonable price that we can provide, given the reality of those budgets. One thing that I can say too, standing up here, is that all 3 of us are actually education practitioners. We've been in the classrooms, we've been in the trenches, we've been in administration. I personally have worked for the Department of Education. I've also worked for Arizona State Schools for the Deaf and Blind, and now obviously taking over for ASBA. So we certainly know our way around classrooms, district offices, and boardrooms. So just wanted to make sure that you know that we're here to help, and we mean that. We've been in your shoes, and they're not always fun to, an easy fit, let's say that. But we are here to help you, and we can certainly be there to support. And then just a little bit about adopting policy. I'm going to hand this back over to Lynn. Do you want to just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Well, adopting policy is, we kind of already did. It's your main job. And so we want to help you with that. Obviously, you are very, very busy and need to outsource that. And so we are happy to be your policy provider and give you all the information and make sure it's very, very clear, since that is in statute, your main job. And I think that we are ready for questions. Oh, with this? So I think Justin already talked about it, that it is, a transparent fee, that it's all inclusive. The subscription is for 48 months and based on enrollment. I think I got everything. So questions?
Any questions?
I have a question. One thing we've talked about as a board is the way that the policies are enumerated, like the numbering system, or in your case, lettering system, and maybe you could speak to that as to why it is a little bit confusing for users. Like we joke about like BEDH and BEDB, and I never know what we're talking about. So maybe there's some sort of thought behind it. So if you could explain maybe where that comes from or how we can better navigate that.
We used to have the numbering system way before I got there, and then they wanted it consistent with the National Education for Policy Network. So the letters, the codification, how we assign policy is based on that policy network. How you can navigate it, dream in letters like I do know. But it's all right there, with the lettering system. Anytime, I know you probably realize that it has a -R, that means it's a regulation, and a -E, that means it's an exhibit. And so you'll have your policy, if there are multiple regulations, it's -RA, -RB, same thing for exhibits. Right, and the index has, A, general guidance, B, board governance, C, superintendent and admin. So that is in your introduction. It gives you the breakdown of what each letter signifies.
Okay.
I guess I'd ask you, what's some of the most common negative feedback you get about your policy services from districts?
Well, it's interesting as far as the policy manual, and I say listening to feedback. Some say, it's too comprehensive, there's too many, and then others are telling us when we are talking about rolling out this upgrade and revamping the policy manual, they said it's still going to have all the regulations, right? It's still going to be comprehensive, right? And so what we're doing is we're working with our attorneys to find, is there a way where we can reorganize it so it's clearer and easier? So we're saying more concise, but we're also keeping that comprehensive piece, trying to make everyone happy. For example, if you saw Section B, there were quite a few policies that were one sentence. And so as we looked at those with our attorneys, there's easier ways that we can, put those together so it's all under, with subheadings, so it's all under one policy. So that's a little bit easier to manage. So I guess, the complaint, we're taking the complaints, we're taking, the kudos, and we're listening, and we're making it the best that we can for you.
That's kind of what I anticipated. I mean, that's what we've heard here, is just the breadth of everything is so much that it's sometimes overwhelming.
And sometimes just adding those subheadings, that this is exactly where you look for this and this. So, with our attorneys, like I said, working with those kinds of things. I had a thought in my mind and now it's gone. I'll probably come up with it. Oh, I know. Also, a lot of board members asking us questions, like even, about the first read and the second read, and can we do it in one? So as we were looking specifically at Section B, and we keep notes on every single question and, what we talk about. And so we looked back at that and what are some of the things that they were unsure about, even rules of order. So, we said, here's some general rules of order, and we highlighted, and now your district can insert, what are your rules of order? What's best for your district? And so taking a look at what all of the board members, superintendents, administrative professionals, what they're asking us, trying to clarify in the policy manual, things that aren't statutorily based, but extremely helpful for you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'll chime in and say it's really a very important service that's served us well for many, many years. Trying to keep up with all the new laws that are passed every year and make sure that we fold the requirements of new legislation into policies just on our own would be really, really difficult. And ASPA's just provided excellent customer service and really good guidance over the years. It's been something that's served our district well for years. No question about that.
And I also want to just note too, something in the policy manual is we have the legal references for each policy linked at the bottom, so you can see where in statute that goes to. We also have internal links, so if you're looking at a particular topic, you can click on that and it takes you to another place in your policy manual that has that specific topic that you're looking at. So just wanted to note that.
I just wanted to mention too that we're a very close staff. And what's really great about it is that your office is right around the corner. Your office is right down the hall. We are a very active staff. We're a very connected staff. And like I mentioned before, policy services works very closely with government relations. Like I said, I'm heading that department at this time. I'm also the lobbyist for ASBA. So what's really nice about that is that it literally goes from the legislature, the governor, onto policy services. So we have that wraparound support at all times. The other thing too is ensuring that we are always up to date and sharing where we are in legislative process. So if it looks like, hey, this one might be incoming, let's, start working through this now. As well as white papers that I've written, things like that. Any testimony or statements that we provide are also shared with policy services, so they're able to see that and understand where our perspective is. Meetings with the governor's office are obviously shared so that they have up-to-date information in terms of what's happening right now, which will go on to impact you, following the legislative session. So that's just another example of just how closely we work together. We're all a well-functioning team. And I know one thing that has occurred in the past was sort of wondering, like, how exactly are your policies, how are these provided, how are these created? And we've talked about our attorneys. One thing is that this is an extraordinarily thorough process. Our policies, before they ever reach you, go through an extensive vetting process, which includes not just one legal opinion, but 2 legal opinions, so that we get more ideas from both sides to see, are these aligned legal opinions? Are there questions there? And if there are questions, then we want to have that discussion and understand where everybody is coming from so that we can find a way to move forward together. So that's just something else that I wanted to explain in terms of what our legal reviews look like. We also have peer reviewers. So peer reviewers will be assigned to different policy items for review to ensure that they understand what this means. They're able to provide feedback to us so that we can then go in and address any questions, or again, if we're looking for alignment, how can we find that alignment by collaborating? I'm very excited. My background is special education, so when we hit that area, I will be a peer reviewer. So I'm very excited. So not only do we work with our internal staff as a staff of experts, but also reach out to the communities, to board members like you, who have this type of expertise, and superintendents as well. So that's just something that we utilize our community in a very effective way, because this needs to work for you, and it needs to work by you. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you.
On the legal reviews that you do, is this an outside legal firm? Are they in-house lawyers? What's kind of the makeup of the?
So we do have an attorney that, we do not currently have a staff attorney. So we do have an attorney, Mr. Justin Pierce, who's with Pierce Coleman. He provides one legal opinion, and he is currently serving as our contract attorney for now. And then we also have another attorney, Martha Taylor, who also provides that legal opinion as well.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Other questions?
Oh, appreciate the presentation.
No, thank you so much.
Thanks for traveling up here.
I know that was long, but
That was good.
I hope it was informative. And on behalf of myself, Dr. Patterson, and Lynn Bondi, thank you again for having us. We appreciate it.
You bet. Safe travels. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 6A, summary of current events. Mr. Teddy.
Okay, super. So just a handful of things. I want to comment just really briefly on the kids that we had here earlier, and thanks to our friends at ASBA for coming up and sharing about your policy services aspect of things that we've been really benefiting from for years. Excuse me. As far as our winter sports, Missy Townsend, who's our athletic director, actually shared with Adam and I a draft of a paper that she's writing to be included in a journal on the national level about the importance of athletic directors and athletic programs and how administrators can support them. And it was quite excellent. I asked, can I share this with the board? She said, it's just in draft form, and I'm going to get a lot of feedback still, and in a few months it'll be published, and you can do it then. So I'll certainly take the opportunity to do that. But one of the things she mentioned, it just really resonated with me. She used the analogy of sports being kind of like the front porch of a school or of a district. And I thought, that really is true. It's not about, it doesn't reflect necessarily the structure of what's inside the main things that's going on in that house. But it tells people on the street who come by, who get a cursory look at the home, or who just visit the home, a lot about the home potentially. And there's a lot to be said, for the curb appeal piece of things. I just thought, boy, the different aspects of that analogy are really apt. My wife and I go walking around our neighborhood, and there's some people who just, from the outside, their house looks really attractive. I've never been inside, but I assume it's fantastic, right? There's some people who the outside is kind of a little dumpy, and I've never been inside. It may be fantastic inside, but I assume it's a little bit dumpy. And I think, though it's not reflective necessarily of what's inside, the academics, the other programs, the culture, the great things we've got going on at Prescott High School and in the district broadly, it certainly is our front porch in many respects. That's the only interface that many people have in town with what's going on in our schools. I'm really proud to say our front porch is pretty outstanding. It's pretty neat. All right. So that said, I'll move on to some current events really quick. Some of you were able to attend this. I was actually at one of the other current events that we're going to show in just a minute, but Chris Predmore, who's our automotive technologies teacher at the high school and has been for many years, man, we're lucky there's so many people who work for a district that I could say, man, we're lucky to have this guy, and it is absolutely the case for Mr. Predmore. He could easily be plying his trade on his own, not worrying about teenagers or policies or regulations or, small paychecks, things like that. But he just makes a huge impact on a lot of kids' lives, and he was named the Career and Technical Education District Teacher of the Year for our part of the CTED district. We're super proud of him, and I know a couple of you, and you can see it in the picture there, a couple of you were able to attend that and honor him in person. Thank you for that. That's super cool. Next. This is kind of neat. A couple of things that happened at Granite Mountain recently. Actually, one is just a picture I took on my way, and it's representative of other things. You can see that I think you can see the police car there. They've gotten some updated vehicles, as they use in their law enforcement. And each of the school resource officer for Mile High and for the high school and for Granite Mountain, each have had, I guess, the logo of the school. And I'm not sure if you can read it underneath police. It says school resource officer. What's the word? Not painted, but decal, whatever, something. There's a verb I'm looking for that is not coming to me. Anyhow, it's on the car. And it's pretty neat as you drive around town, see that. Sarah's mentioning to me sometimes she sees that and she says, oh, I know who that is, and we'll wave and whatnot. And I love that those vehicles are wrapped. There you go. It's a wrap. That's what's going on. Yeah, Adam knew that because he's got his whole school pretty much wrapped these days. At any rate, it's a neat symbol of the partnership that we've got with the city as far as law enforcement is concerned. And I love, just the police vehicle presence at our schools is potentially a deterrent to people, making bad decisions. So that's a real neat thing that we're able to do for kids. The other picture, I'm not sure how well you can see it. So there's a young lady there. I think she's 11 years old, and she's drumming on her drum set along to, I don't know, some Katy Perry song of some kind. And there's about 700 people in the audience. Mrs. Chunglo might be there. You may have had to leave and get back to your school at that point. But this was the Granite Mountain talent show, just one of the acts that I was there for. I missed the very beginning, and then I wasn't there for the end. But it was so neat to see 10 and 11 and 12-year-old kids putting themselves out there in front of 500 of their peers and about, what, Rachel, maybe 150, 200 parents and other adults there.
Half of the bottom bleachers were nailed.
There you go. It was pretty cool. And if it's okay, Rachel, can you tell us who won this talent show?
Jules Chunglo.
Pretty spectacular talent in that family. So yeah, pretty neat. But all of the kids did something kind of cool. And some of them, there were some like, whoa, I'm totally impressed at how talented that 11-year-old kid is. And some of them were like, I'm totally impressed at how they will get out there and put themselves out in front of other people. It's one of the things we don't get tested on, how kids present themselves to others or how willing they are to be out there and interface with others. But boy, that's a big part of success as an adult, isn't it? That's one of the things that we teach and foster in our schools. So pretty proud of that. Next. Great. These are some pictures of our kindness assemblies. This is where I was when you were presenting, some of you, to Mr. Predmore. I was at the Taylor Hicks one there, the larger picture, I guess, on the side. There was a presenter, I think she was from Utah, that came down and presented about kindness, and she did some singing. She told some different stories about herself when she was in school. It really got the kids involved in how important it is to care for other people and be kind to other people and interact positively with other people, and what a difference that can make in your own life and the lives of others. And at the end, she shared, I think maybe you can see the one from Abaya Judd there is in the lower left-hand corner. So that's the young lady. Sarah put a star over her face because I think we wanted to be careful on some FERPA issues to not show a student's picture in public where we hadn't received permission from that. Backs of heads are okay, fronts of heads less so. But at any rate, the picture up on the board was presentation of a book that she gave to one of the students at each of the schools, which she called The Kindest Kid in America, and had asked the faculty at each school, hey, can you choose somebody who's just really exemplary in showing this, one of the character pillars of caring, this trait of kindness that we're going to be emphasizing. It's pretty neat day. Nancy did a nice write-up in the paper for us. I know you were at the first one. And Deputy Chief Brambilla presented the Kindness Award at one, and Chief Bonnie presented at one of the others as well. Pretty neat day.
Clark, will you remind everybody how this came to be?
Yes,
That's
I
the-
sure will, yeah, and hopefully, I
Sorry.
think Carly's
Yeah.
going to touch on that, so I didn't want to
Okay,
steal a lot of thunder, but,
You can have it.
are you
I have
sure?
thunder.
Okay. Give us some more details on this, but it was our Prescott High School Student Council who got together and said, hey, we want to make an impact in our school and throughout our district on the way that we're interacting with one another and treating each other, particularly around kindness. So reached out to, thank you, reached out to this gal, set it up, paid for her to be here, and coordinated with me to get some special presenters along with her, coordinated with principals at the elementary schools to find a date and a time that was going to work for everybody, worked with Mr. Neely a bunch, and it just ended up being a really neat thing, I think, for a lot of our students. Yeah, thank you for that. And then Carly, fill in some details when it's your turn here in just a
Yeah,
minute.
it was really fun. I got to go to all 3 schools.
Okay, yeah.
And watch both presentations at the high school. And she wrote a little book for each of the students and gave it to them, and their families came. And yeah, it was just such a fun opportunity. And when I went to Abijad, which was the last school, I was walking in, and I saw this dad, and I was like, oh, I bet he's like the winner, like the kid's parent. And so I asked him, I was like, oh, like, did your kid win? I was like, congrats, congrats. And he was like, thank you. I shook his hand, and then when it was presented at the end, it turns out it was like because he had gotten sick, and like the girl got nominated because she had like endured so much with her dad's illness, which is like a really like sensitive subject for me. And I like didn't even notice that he had like a physical disability. It just like, I don't know, it just didn't come across me. And Abijad is like the school I went to, and I got to see like my old teachers. And so it was just like really impactful for me and a few of the seniors who took leads on it. And we got to hang out with Jessie for like literal hours because there was just lots of long breaks, and absorb that. And student council and our SALT team on campus also got to have a lunch with her. And it was just like one of those really amazing opportunities. I don't know like how many speakers we'll ever come across again that signed up to drive, and her parents actually lived also in Arizona, so they came up with her and go to four of our PUSD schools and write custom books for every single one. And she got people from the high school to maybe write the books for her as well, and then sit through lunches with 30 students, and then me and a few other students from our student council. So it was really great for me personally. I really hope it had the effect of kindness that we hope for. And now it's just a thing of creating that environment every single day, which is something I know the schools are working on and student council is working on. And so it's just a really, really great opportunity.
Thanks, Carly.
Yeah, it was super cool. I appreciate you generating those ideas and making this possible, and it dovetails so nicely with a lot of the character-related initiatives that we have at each of our elementary schools. So appreciate that a lot. Great. Last couple things here really quick. Two pictures here that actually are related in a way. So on the right, I'll mention that one first. I don't think this was at our future freshman night. This is just one of the times I happened to be by the high school, went in the front lobby, and there's a job description for principals, and cleaning up after everybody else is not on it. But I will tell you, to me, this was not only representative of the way that Mr. Neely approaches his leadership, but each of our principals. You'll find principals out there shoveling snow and cleaning up in the cafeteria, wiping things down, stuff that fell down on the floor, putting it back up. We have folks that they don't leave it to other people. They say, hey, something needs to be done. I'm right here. I'll do that. It's pretty cool. I love that we've got that going on in each of our schools. And Mr. Neely was kind to smile for me for just a minute. I don't know if you knew that was going to show up here, but I thought it was a representative of his approach to things, but all of our leaders, which is super cool. The one on the left, if you just focus in front, you're like, there's some people. What are they doing? That's a hallway full of about 80 people. One of 5 hallways that were full of 80 people at the same time at our future freshman night. There are hundreds and hundreds of people there. I'm not sure if you got like somebody clicking on their thing to count at the door, but hundreds of potential PHS students came through. Adam, remind me the date. It was a couple of weeks ago, just before the break.
Yeah, so it was the Wednesday before we went to break.
Okay. Oh,
It says it right there.
maybe it's written right there. That's a possibility. That's one possibility. Anyhow, great night. They had pretty much all of their teachers there representing each department and each discipline of study, and all of the different clubs and the different activities and student council and whatnot. Their student council reps showing people around and sharing things about their school. I loved, you probably had 50 students actively involved in sharing about your school in addition to.
Double that.
There you go.
Double that.
All right, we're gonna go with double that.
I'm serious. That is like the student ran event. And like the teachers do a lot with their departments, but I don't know, because all of the student council kids were there. That's 30 at least. So
There you go.
I disclude them, maybe 50. But
Let's
very
go with
fun.
100. Let's go with 100. Anyhow, it was a pretty neat night, and it was a privilege for me to be there. And then I think maybe the last thing, here you go. Yeah, so this is kind of fun. I'll let you process this really quick. So this was one of many signs that when I went by Granite Mountain just before the break, I think. Maybe it's this week, I can't remember, it's last week. At any rate, I think it was probably their student council had gotten together and made just kind of some neat inspirational signs about, again, interacting with each other in cool ways and showing appreciation to your teachers and telling your mom and dad, hey, thanks for everything you do for me and things like that. And I just thought that's pretty clever, actually. So I'm going to take a picture of that, and it'll not only represent another great thing going on in our schools, again, doesn't show up on test scores or anything like that, but it's a big part of what we're teaching in our schools, and hopefully it's making an impact in families in our community. And that's what I've got.
It's like college
At the end, did you want me to mention briefly about the Auditor General's spending report?
Yes, would you? Or do you want me to? Either way, why don't you?
I have the document up, so I can quickly just.
Great, we're going to give you a comprehensive look at this later, but yeah, Brian and I had agreed that we were going to give you a quick preview, and I'd totally forgotten. Thank you.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if it was at the end.
If that's all right, if you kind of piggyback on what I was going to do.
Yeah,
instead of
no,
me talking, I'll just have you.
We mentioned that on March 1st, the Auditor General, they put out their spending report in which were compared to comparable districts, specifically operating peers. And just the big ones that we always highlight were that our classroom spending continues to be the highest at 72.5%, with the second district underneath that, not even, well, at 69.8%. So we're more than 2-point-some% higher than even the second within our peer group. Our administration spending, which is always something that is looked at, we were the second lowest this year. It happened to be that Humboldt was 0.4% lower than PUSD, and it seems like we flip-flop every year. They did have an increase to their administration staffing this year with some assistant principals at the elementary school, so that's probably going to change for them. When it comes to just those areas that we get low or very low or high, these are our designations that we'll share next month more in depth. But in administration, compared to our peer group, we were very low. Spending per square foot for plant operations, we were low. Food service, which is spending per meal, we were very low. Transportation, with spending per mile, we were very low. And transportation spending per rider, we were very low. So once again, that just kind of indicates the lean operation of the district and really putting the money in the area of the classroom. Once again, over 72% of our money going to instruction, student support, and instructional support.
And we'll dig in deep with you with that later. Another piece that came out in that Auditor General report is the test scores for every district, so we can compare where we're at, and basically the same situation as we were in last year. We're in the top, essentially 20% in each of the 3 tested areas of all districts in Arizona. So do we have room for improvement? We absolutely do, and we're committed to that, but we're pretty pleased that we're doing well compared to other schools with the same kind of resources as us. Yeah, there's a lot to be proud of.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
All right. Moving on to item 6A2, governing board members, current events. Dr. Mangum.
I felt like a slacker this month compared to the months before where we were very busy. I attended a couple of tennis meets, mainly because I have a son who's competing in tennis, and that was enjoyable. It was great to be on campus and rubbing shoulders with the athletes and their coaches. And then I also participated in the Distinguished Alumni Committee, and we had a meeting right after the last board meeting and discussed some opportunities to nominate some distinguished alumni.
That's awesome.
I know, I also felt like it was such a break from the listening tour. We went every
You
week,
two were
like,
pretty
every
busy,
single week for a while, so.
Once or twice a week spending time in school, so.
But I was able to go to the Teacher of the Year presentation for the Mountain Institute, and I'm just so amazed at our entire CTED program and all that is done, and the students that were there were very much impressed with their teacher. Like, you could tell he makes a big impact, so it was really neat to see.
So I participated in a town hall with Representative Greg Stanton on possible cuts to the education department. Basically was able to ask a question about how do you see this impacting rural districts if this IDEA money is reallocated. As a politician, he gave a political answer, but he did answer the question, which was good, and basically said we need to make sure that our rural schools are not left out in this because of the lack of infrastructure and resources that are available that are not available in rural areas as they are in urban areas. I was also able to attend the MIC TED Teacher of the Year and just echo everything that's been said already about Mr. Predmore and his classes. I know I announced this last week, but we actually got to do the celebrity reader at Taylor Hicks, where I got to be in the second grade and the kindergarten grades, and read a book that wasn't one that's in their regular rotation of books.
So what did you read?
It was called Stop That Pickle, and it's by an author that my aunt knew, and she gave us the book and had it signed for my daughters when they were little. So it was a lot of fun. And then I also want, just kind of outside of the school board role, but just a big thank you to the ESS program, especially at the high school, working with a kid there, just trying to help him be successful so that, number one, so that he can play baseball. He wants to play baseball. But also just to get him on track. And they have stepped up in a way that every child deserves, but I'm just happy to see this child getting. And in helping him get his grades to a point where hopefully we're at a point where he's stable enough to not have to worry about every single grade check that's coming down the line. And it's always, every week is a new week, and we'll see how it goes, but they have put a lot of effort into helping this kid, and I just feel like every kid deserves that, and I know our teachers work for that, but I'm just really happy to say that they're doing their job.
Not too many things. Caught a tennis match the other day that was pretty fun. Watched the girls play softball. Softball did not look like that when I was in high school. I cannot believe how fast they pitched that ball. I would have been frightened to even stand close to the pitcher. I also had a chance to, with my role on the board of the Prescott Education Foundation, we did the videotaping of our next wonderful nominees for Rising Stars, which is coming up in May. And once again, I say this every year, I watch these kids, I watch us videotape them and hear about their lives and hear about their parents and hear about their teachers and their community. And I always go home after that day realizing that we don't have anything to worry about. The future is in good hands. We have some amazing kids, and every single one of them shone. It was just, they shined like a star, and the things they had to say about their lives and where they're going and their goals and their dreams, it's astonishing to me. And that's about it for me. I did Cal Cortis's memorial service. Just, again, it's what he did in education, and it's just a pleasure to celebrate someone like that. And that's about it for me.
Sure.
And I'll have nothing next month because I'm leaving town. So.
I did the Taylor Hicks reader too, so I got to go into the second and fourth grade classrooms, rile up the kids, and then leave. So it was great. Just like bedtime in my house. So. And then, and I don't know if you saw the article, but Taylor Hicks, the singer, came in. And you saw that he what did he send? An autograph photo and a harmonica to Taylor Hicks because he had heard that there was a Taylor Hicks Elementary.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool. Little slivery connection there.
I need to say, when he was on American Idol, I had more enrollee kids and parents asked if the school was named after him. We actually reached out to him to see if we could get an autographed picture and never heard back. So I need to know what Mr. Hilton did to get that.
Do you get credit then? Like, did you think it was a coincidence and he's been fighting for this for years?
I think so. He
That's
probably
right.
kept
Yeah,
that
we
letter.
get credit.
Yeah,
I will
finally
take
came true.
credit.
Yeah. Thanks for doing that, Brian. So as a reminder, this month the Whiskey Off-Road is at the end of the month, so we are taking a lot of volunteers, right, guys? Right, volunteers? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We need a lot of NHS. And,
I have a
thank you.
meeting Friday, so
Awesome.
you
Okay.
can get to me before then.
Awesome, thank you. So that's the 25th and the 26th. It's also, Taylor Hicks is doing an autism awareness walk that day. So anybody that volunteers can cut away from that for a little bit. Tomorrow night is the Alliance 4.0, I guess, honor banquets, for every school in the area. They do an amazing job. Judge Napper did an amazing speech last year, and that takes place in the Rollie P. Simmons Adult Center. And then Saturday, was the start of flag football around here, and once again, Miss Chuglo's oldest daughter, we were amazed watching her solve a Rubik's Cube in front of our eyes, probably about 20 times from my 6-year-old. So anyway, that's what they do all the time, so it doesn't even stop. So pretty amazing. Let's move on to Governing Board Representative.
I know. I feel so sad about Vanessa, truly.
So I'll just let you know, Vanessa emailed us just as the meeting was started, said she was having car trouble and she's stuck in the middle of the road and she's super sorry. So I just told her, be safe. If you can get here later, awesome. If not, no worries. Carly will be able to
I
carry
also
the
have
load.
been dealing with car struggles, so I really feel for Vanessa right now. I talked about that one. Oh, prom is Saturday. Everyone come to Charlotte Hall and see everyone. I am so excited. I went and did a service project on Saturday at the mall. I did the Priceless Prom project, and during my little lunch break, I went and saw the venue, and the junior class was actually on their hands and knees scrubbing the floors. Like, the full image. Like, this isn't me exaggerating.
What's the venue, Carly?
It's at the mall. It's like the old Barnes & Noble.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
So that's very exciting. And, prom is a beast for, 6 juniors to take on. And so I am just very excited to see how it works out and to not clean up afterwards either. And the Granite Mountain Talent Show was recently, and our NHS Talent Show for Prescott High School is April 18th. If anyone wants to come. We did invite all of the schools as well, and our auditions are this week, and we are seeing a lot of potential. And it is just like, I remember last year, I was just so shocked at the students who came out. I would just never know the skills. Nathaniel was there. Yeah. And, it's just like really a talented group of people. You would never know the talents that they have, and it's just really fun. For that student involvement, April 25th, I'm surprised Ms. Cherry didn't talk about this. We have the food forest has been like a big work in progress, and Interact made a peace poll, which we worked with a local pottery shop, and Bradshaw also has a peace poll, so we worked together, and it says something very nice in 4 languages, and I glazed one of the sides. So there's a big ceremony for that, April 25th. In our food forest, and Interact is going to be having a little journaling. But it's just really fun to get to collaborate with the people working on the food forest, and as an Interact Club member, it's just such great connections that we get to make, and such good life skills about learning to grow, because my parents have a garden, so it's just like getting to spread that to our students is really important. My last thing is one of my coworkers came to me recently with a problem they were having with their school, and I said, you know what, I'm just a student here. I don't actually do anything administratively, and I recommended her to Mr. Tenney, and she the following week came to me and said she had never felt more heard and happy with the PU and felt really confident in the PUSD system and that all the problems were resolved. Didn't be anonymous, but you know, it was just one of those things that like you preach and then it turns out well in practice, and it just solidifies the confidence in our administration. But that's all for this meeting.
Thanks, Carly. Awesome. All right, item 6B, community comments shared with governing board. Brett?
Yes, thank you. This continues to be an important part of the agenda for me, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the voice of the community. I also recognize that my sample size is very low, and I met with a number of people, but they don't represent, I don't think, the community as a whole, but they are a great sample size, and I hope they all feel listened to. And that's been a struggle for me. I'm a problem solver. I like to have my point known as well, and sometimes it's a counterpoint to theirs. And I've been working really hard at listening and understanding. And so I'm grateful for this part of the agenda. The first community member that I talked to, or that called me, had some negative. Well, let me start with the positive. Number of people I talked to really enjoyed the giving input on the survey, the 4-day-a-week survey. And I had a number of people said, thank you for asking, thank you for reaching out to us and asking, how we feel about going to 4 days a week. I did have one person who felt like the survey wasn't a good survey and that was leading in the questions that they asked. Let's see. They had another member of the community who lives close to Taylor Hicks and felt like we were wasting money on putting a new roof on there and running the lights and the AC in the summertime when we didn't need to. Then I had a third member of the community send me an article that they wanted me to read about money wasted in education, and cited it was an article out of a magazine, and it had a graph of how much education costs over the last, I think it was from 1960, so 65 years, and it was basically critical of the Department of Education and the bureaucracy. And so I read it and called them back and asked them why they wanted me to read that, because it seemed like it was a little bit of a disconnect to me with the local education versus the federal education. But he had some great points about local things that we discussed. One of his concerns was social and emotional learning, and he also felt like we could do a better job of focusing on classical education, and he felt like that if we did a better job of focusing on the academics, then it might help us pass a bond or an override and give our district a little bit more money. That same father also talked a little bit about his son in sports and how sports has motivated him academically, and I think that's been mentioned a couple times, and it was great to see all of our athletes here, and I think sports does do a great job of motivating a portion of our student body to keep their grades up and give them an opportunity to compete. And I think that wraps up my portion of the public comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Jen?
I would say the majority of the public comment I received were just from people I know who had some thoughts about the 4-day week. They also were excited to have been asked in the survey, and many were surprised that we hadn't already either addressed that earlier, or that this is kind of the first time they felt like they'd been asked. So it was kind of interesting. And then I also had an engaging conversation with someone about ESA money and the fact that we do have sports here and PUSD. and how we really see a value in being able to offer the sports that we offer, and that our students who come here to PUSD have the advantage of being able to participate in those. And it's important for us to offer those programs because it is what draws a lot of students into our world.
Just a couple comments again about the 4-day week. Couple teachers and just didn't really know how to approach it. They didn't feel like there was a good one way or the other. So kind of ambivalent that way. I think the big thing I gathered was that a lot of the non-educators out there don't understand how the days will change. All they see is another day off, and they don't know that by going to 4 days instead of 4.5, we're adding hours to the school day. So I don't know if that was included in the survey, because I read some of those comments in the compiled comments, and I just don't know if that was explained very well, that we're not dropping the hours that students will be in school if the board approved that. So I think there was some misunderstanding out there about that.
I had nothing except that one person told me they were very happy to see how quickly the new roof went on at Abayajan. They were surprised.
It's just starting.
Well, they thought it was finished, but what they've done, I guess.
Taylor Heck's just finished.
Yeah, but they were
didn't
happy
need it.
to see the project going on.
Again? That's it, Jim?
They literally just started.
They have made some good progress, though. There were mismatched shingles for years as we effected a repair with what we had available in terms of funding, and it's been a long time coming to get School Facilities Board funding for these projects, and they've made some pretty good progress tearing off the mismatch there.
Yeah, Mile High is going right now as well.
Anything else?
Nope, I didn't have any emails this time.
So my public comments all surrounded the 4-day school week. And I honestly reached out. So I pulled information. I reached out to certain people that I know their kids go to charter schools. I know some of them go to Chino Valley, go to Humboldt. A lot of our, and we have, if you don't know, our factory consists of 400 employees, and a majority of them have kids. And to a person, they were against the 4-day. And for several very good reasons. It's a struggle, no matter how they look at it. And, we'll look at the numbers here. I walked into a maybe, and now I'm listening to these people. I listen to teachers. Teachers, that extra hour in the afternoon is important. That evening time is important. Someone challenged me on the half day, and they said, well, when we really look at it, isn't it just 1 hour we're reducing on the Friday? And I asked my wife, and she said, yeah, it's an hour, right? Just over an hour, rather than a half day. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
That-
yeah.
I
On
would
some
say-
campuses.
Right.
Yeah, to call it a half day.
Depends on the
Depends on
school.
the school.
Okay.
We have some schools that are as much as 2.5 hours,
Okay.
2+ hours shorter out of 6.5.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something to say, is it truly a half day or not? So just something that we kind of have to,
Get your-
however we decide to do, but anyway, I just want to be very transparent about that. I was very leading. We know, the one that I asked is in a charter school. They know they are bringing their kids back in Mile High. I mean, they're at basis right now. They made that decision, and they went from a 4-day at Skyview. They're now to 5-day. They like the 5-day. It's just it's great for them. So anyway, just wanted to be that. And that's it. Okay. So we'll move on to action items, consent agenda, item 7A. Do we have any items anybody wants to highlight or pull?
I would like to pull 7A2 on approving the donations so they can each be recognized independently.
All right. Any other items?
I would like to just maybe hear some information on 7A6 and 7A7. That way.
Okay. Okay, I will pull 7A6 and A7. Jane, do you want to just highlight 7A2?
Sure. Do you want me to do
Okay.
that now?
Let's do that, and then we can pass the agenda, or the consent, and then go back and vote again.
One
on the
option would be
two.
exactly that,
Let's
yeah.
just do that.
Take the two aside, vote on the consent agenda
We have
without
a-
them,
yeah.
talk about them, and then vote on those
We
separately.
have quite a few this month, however, I still think it's important that we solo or individually thank people for making contributions to our district, because we would not be able to do what we do without them. So William Smith donated $55 to PHS Athletics. Prescott Sunrise Lions Foundation gave $1,500 to the Lincoln Read to Feed program. Vivian Swanson gave $300 to Lincoln Administration. Deborah McPhee gave a donation of a 2020 Nordic Track Commercial X32i to the PHS Athletics Physical Rehab Program, which I thought was pretty cool. Isabel, I'm not sure about Armoni, donated a check in the amount of $800 to our PHS band. Marilyn and Russell Dalton gave a check in the amount of $300 for PHS Athletics in memory of Cal. The PUSD Education Foundation, which I'm a part of, we gave a donation for PMH math teacher supplies in the amount of $23,100.
I do believe, I think that's the stipends. I don't think it's the supplies.
That's
I do
this,
not.
I checked with Paul, and he told me that's what it was for. But you think it was the stipends for the math teachers?
were stipends.
That's what I thought as well.
I thought so. I
Okay.
think it just was an S
So I
word that
think
wasn't
he-
written
yes.
legibly on
Okay.
the check.
It was
did
a
go-
lot of pencils.
It
So
did
let
go
me-
into the math PUSDF gifts and donation accounts, so it was deposited correctly.
Okay,
It's just- think that's
I
a
questioned him on that, but so that was for the stipends that we gave the Mile High math teachers for taking on math. Donation from Front Stream for $27 for Lincoln Character Education. Richard and Lori Kelly, donation of $100 for PHS Athletics in memory of Les Fenderson. Gary and Kim Kelly donated $200 to PHS Athletics, and that's a different Kelly, same last name, in memory of Les Fenderson. And finally, an anonymous donation for $160 to PHS Athletics in memory of Les Fenderson. So see, even after they pass,
yeah.
they continue to make an impact on our schools because we get all these donations.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda, minus items 7A6 and 7A7.
So moved.
Motion, do you have a second?
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. All right, item 7A6. Mr. Ted?
Yeah, so we have a long-term MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with the hospital for a program that they term Partners for Healthy Students. They've got an RV that's equipped inside with medical care, primarily like exam types things, right? It's not urgent care type of a deal, but that they bring to Mile High Middle School, because it's kind of in a central location there for our schools and for the community each week on Thursday. It's a long-term thing, and like most of our MOUs that we're just re-upping for some reason, we put it on the consent agenda on the assumption that this board will want to do it the last. They become aware that access to medical care is difficult for them, particularly in a financial way, that they reach out to the Partners for Healthy Students program and say, hey, here's a place you can go, you can get an initial exam for whatever issue it is, and then we've got partners in the community, I think for both medical and dental care, if I'm not mistaken, that have agreed to provide services at a discounted rate or for free in a lot of cases. And I think, Sarah, the updates are just clarifying that they're going to come weekly on Thursday.
Correct.
And that they don't keep any medications on the premise. Everything else is the same as it's been before. And our role is to give them a space and to refer kids with needs, to medical needs, to them. It's been a neat partnership over the years.
Any questions?
No, I don't think so. I just didn't know what it was. But
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, let's move on to item 7A7 then.
Okay. This is an IGA, so an MOU is just a memorandum of understanding. It's an organization that we have a partnership with, and we kind of explicate how the partnership will work. And IGA is the same thing, but it's with some other government agency. And in this case, it's the Department of Economic Security in Arizona. We've got a program for our special education students that is called Transitioning Students to Work, our TSW program. It provides vocational education training and experience in the community. We've got a teacher, essentially, and an assistant who work with the kids, work with some of our kids, most of our kids actually at the high school, I think, who've got IEPs, and they have a chance to go visit with those folks regularly and then go on field trips out in the community. In some cases, it's students with significant disabilities who probably won't find themselves in a typical working environment after high school. In other cases, it's kids with just a learning difference of some kind that they're looking and seeing what options are available to me and that fit well with my disability and the way that I've learned to compensate for it. So Brian, remind me on the funding. We partner with them. We pay for all of the staffing up front, and then if we meet the reporting requirements and the parameters of the program, they reimburse us what percent of the total cost?
They reimburse us 56%.
Okay, yeah, it's something just north of half that they reimburse us. And yeah, this is our agreement with them that we've had for several years, saying we'll continue the program, we'll provide the level of staffing that they require and the types of opportunities for kids that they require. And it also fits really nicely because these are requirements under the IDEA Act for us to provide for students who are nearing the end of their time with us in PUSD to prepare them for the workforce. And we can do that in different ways, but we found this to be a cost-effective and impactful way to be able to do that.
58%. 42% is our.
Okay, yeah.
So it allows them to help cover the expense.
Right,
of-
the IGA
of
is.
what we already have to provide
Yep.
anyway.
Yeah, we've got to
Okay.
provide this service in one way or another anyway. So yeah, we've got a separate teacher, separate classroom, separate program that kids can attend. And yeah, we end up being reimbursed for just north of half of what the cost to our district is.
Nice. Thank you.
Nice.
Great questions, yep.
All right, I'll take a motion to consider approving items 7A6 and 7A7 of the consent agenda.
Make that motion.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. All right, we're moving on to item 7B, study and voting sessions. We have two call to public. So before I read this, so I just want to read this. So just prior to public comment, we want to make sure that everybody is respectful. And this is a standard statement that we give, and we want to hear openly from the public. So thank you for showing interest in this public process. Our governing board is interested in hearing from all who want to speak. We're also determined to maintain appropriate decorum. Please be sure that your comments are respectful and constructive, are specific to the voting item for which you have signed up to speak. If a speaker strays off topic for too long, they'll be asked to conclude their remarks. We want every person who is interested in speaking to be treated with respect and to have their full time to speak. So speakers will be called to the podium. This will occur in order of the voting items in the order that the individual is requested to speak to each item. We plan to give every speaker 3 minutes. If you're still speaking at 3 minutes, you'll be asked to finish your remarks. Per open meeting laws, board members are not allowed to respond to public comments except to clarify misinformation. So first speaker we have is Ms. Anne Marie DiCarlo.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, and thank you for letting me address you a second time on this issue. I appreciate the opportunity. I know that you're planning to vote on this issue tonight for a final time, so I just want to urge you, this is an appeal, to consider a few things before any changes are made or solidified. First of all, a petition was submitted to the board which has not been addressed publicly. It was a written petition that spoke to the importance of the public being able to have easy access to the board, and it had several recommendations in it. And I just want to focus on two issues. First, it is possible, as the way things stand right now, that issues or concerns of the public don't become agenda items that will actually reach this board and be able to be debated and discussed. For example, the recent NAEP scores, which highlighted the poor performance of Arizona schools, PUSD included, in terms of the number of students that achieve proficient ratings on standardized tests. Arizona, by the way, ranks last among the 50 states in education, and that's according to the World Population Review. There are 2 other sites that put us at 48 and 49, respectively. Although there are many good things that happen in our schools, and we've been witness to that by coming to the board sessions and hearing what's going on in our schools. It is important that addressing the root causes of this issue need to be handled here and discussed by this board. And we have, as the public is concerned, we've been shocked that this hasn't been brought up as an agenda item. Secondly, the public should have the ability to communicate in an open forum on issues before they reach the point of being voted on. At that point, public input is too little and too late. And sometimes the process is too cumbersome or too mysterious for the average taxpayer to figure out how to communicate with you, and that's part of the issue. In that same petition, we had also asked that any letters to the board be published in their entirety as an attachment on the school site. We understand that you wish to summarize the correspondence that you receive from the public, but the public does have the right to read the original unfiltered correspondence in its entirety. Doing this demonstrates transparency. In various statements to the press, the board was quoted as saying that they wish to demonstrate trust and transparency to the public in making the decision on how to listen to us best. I wish to remind you that trust is earned, and layers of filtration never replace face-to-face engagement like we're having right here. Thank you for your consideration and for your time, and I appreciate it very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next speaker we have is Linda Kahn.
Board. It's good to be on the mic again. As a community member and supporter of public school, I'd like to express my concern in regarding that current policy, limiting public input during school board meetings. It only limits the community input all the more as you adjust this current policy. Many people voiced their concerns to me. Primarily, it's the difficulty of navigating the district website if they're not used to doing that, and the time constraints, the 72 hours before, if they determine that there is nothing on the voting agenda that they're going to have addressed for their issue. So contacting the board members, if they can navigate the website and they're not friends of the board members and don't have your personal phone numbers, it's very difficult for them to know what to do. Having these issues brought to the entire board is something you need to consider and not try and limit them as much as you do. Being afraid that they're going to say too much to you in 3 minutes' time is a little overreach with your ability there. I'd like to urge the board members to consider adopting a policy that introduces a segment like you do the board study. You give 15 minutes of that time to before the meeting. Give 15 minutes to the public for comments. It's not too much to ask. Thank you.
All right, item 7B1, consider approving the resolution to join the Arizona School Boards Association Insurance Trust, known as ASBATES. Mr. Moore.
It's a difficult conversation because we've been with Kairos for the last 5 years after dissolving our Unified Employee Benefit Trust with Humboldt. But unfortunately, due to funding within Arizona, we have to make some tough decisions that we as administration deemed a recommendation in the best interest of our employees. And in this case, it's to switch insurance companies from Kairos to Asbate. It came out with Kairos that their standard default increase for next year was going to be 14%, and then districts would be individually analyzed based upon that. But anything close to a 14% would mean no raises for PUSD and probably cuts to even cover that insurance cost. So we did reach out to Kairos's main competitor, being Asbate, to be underwritten, and their policy is, their insurance coverage is different enough that actually their quote for next year was lower by 2.2% than what Kairos was for this year. And so we looked deeply. We put out a survey to our staff about the coverage of the insurance company, that they do not use UMR as Kairos does. They use Aetna. And we did not know whether that was prevalent up here in the Tri-City area, and it turned out that it quite is. And so we put forward just a kind of a chart. We offer one plan as our default plan to our employees, and then there is an option to buy up to a plan that has a lower deductible. There is a middle plan, and I don't even know what kind of classification is, that they could choose. And then there's 3 high deductible plans in which it's a lower cost to the district, in which we take the difference of that default plan that we do funds, and we put the difference into an HSA account for our employees to use. And so this is a little bit of a T-chart to show you the difference between Kairos and Asbate. And so we'll kind of go over it and then take questions, because it's a big vote to change insurance companies, and we want to make sure that it's done thoughtfully. So when it comes, and you have this in front of you because it was a little bit difficult to put on a piece of paper. So for the fiscal year, and really this is really a financial decision due to the increased cost between what Kairos was proposing and what Asbate came underwritten. So when it comes to the difference, Kairos would have a $126,000 increase for next year. They did come back to us from that 14%, and they told that they changed the way they were looking at individual districts, taking location in consideration, because we're really pigeonholed up here in northern Arizona. And unfortunately, we have really one hospital provider. Dignity Health has a stranglehold up here and can charge the insurance companies, really what they want. And it's more expensive up here than down in the valley when it comes to cost to insurance companies. They also looked at really the large claims districts have as part of their rate costs. That $126,000 actually represents a 3% increase for Kairos, which is nowhere near the 14. But since we did ask for a quote from Asbate, which came in as a negative 2.2, it is a $200,000+ difference. And so for Asbate, it would actually be a $92,000 decrease. You put those two together, and it's $218,000 difference in what our cost for insurance would be for next year. When it comes to the insurance company, like I said, Aetna is their provider. We put out a survey. We had 98 employees put all their specialists for medical insurance, medical providers, and their primary care physician. We did have one gastroenterologist. I didn't say that does not take Aetna. We also had a family practice in which it's a husband and wife, and the wife does not take Aetna, but the husband does. I contacted that, and they said for our existing clients, they would be willing to shift over to the husband. So That was the results of the survey, and then we can kind of go down, because another big,
And other than that, every doctor from every employee who looked at any of the providers that they've ever used in town, who have taken it, UMR, also take Aetna. So
yeah, there was about 20 that said they couldn't find their doctor, or they put in the name of the building rather than the doctor. I spent about a day calling practices and asking if they take Aetna, and it came down to this was the difference between Aetna and UMR was one specific provider and one provider within a practice. Questions on that? I think we'll just take questions if you have any after each one. Any questions on the survey and or the cost difference between the two? One of the other differences is we do have, Clerk, Mr. Tenney, was it about a quarter of our employees that have dependent insurance?
I think that's what you found for us, Andy.
You know, and so that's also something that we need to look at, because as our policy or coverage cost increases, it also does for the dependents as well. And so when it came to the dependent insurance, if we stayed with Kairos, a spouse, and once again, this is for that default funded plan, spouse would go up a little over $300. A child coverage would be $300, and family would go up $660. Given the decrease of cost for ASBATE, spouse would decrease a little over $200, child $204, family $404. So it really makes a difference in the net if we stayed with Kairos versus going with UMR. It's basically for a spouse, it's a $522 difference. For child, it's $502, and it's just over $1,000 if someone had family coverage.
The board's aware of this, but for the public's information, we provide full insurance for the employee, but not for their dependents, and so the employee pays that cost out of pocket for dependent insurance. So that would be a difference in what they bring home in their paycheck.
And it really is. It's just a difference. You know, they would have that cost deducted out of their paycheck before they get to their net direct deposit. And so it is something that we need to consider. We also do have the option of having our retirees on our insurance, and there was a difference, and I forgot to put it up here and even mention it, I think, to Mr. Tenney, is with Kairos, they are analyzed from year to year together as a pool with our employees and our dependents. With ASBATE, the retirees are analyzed independently than our employees and dependents, and so if we have 10 retirees, and possibly because of age, the costs are a little bit more, that cost for them from year to year is dependent upon that smaller group than, and not affecting the cost of the districts.
And again, retirees would pay for their own insurance.
Again.
But they're eligible to use this same plan.
Do we have a number on how many retirees are taking advantage of that?
It's very small,
I would think
because
so.
I believe it now the state's provided is more affordable than what Kairos is. No matter what, it is our cost plus 140 times 140%. That's the cost for the retiree. With ASBATE, actually, it's less expensive than that 140%. As they were underwritten for the quotes, but once again, that would change independently based upon their usage.
Between the two, Brian, so between Kairos and ASBATE, which one would you say has the biggest percentage of the market share in terms of educational districts?
So Kairos has not only districts, but also municipalities. ASBATE is solely school districts. I remember that from a pool standpoint, Kairos as a pool is larger, but ASBATE is not far behind that.
ASBATE touts themselves as insuring more districts, but
Yes.
I think Brian's exactly right. The Kairos pool, including municipalities, is slightly larger.
Yeah.
And when we were self-insured, that was the problem, is that the smaller the pool, the more volatility that medical market and trends would affect that pool. We only had 700 employees within our combined pool. And so Kairos was very attractive at that time because they, 20,000 or so folks, but like I said, Asbates is not far behind that. They're in the high teens, if I remember correctly.
So you think because there's municipalities involved, there isn't as much leverage with Kairos, and that's why we have such, I mean, it looks like there's a lot of leverage with Asbate in order to be able to provide this amount, right? Or what is it that they can provide? Why can't it?
It is plan differences.
Oh.
And we'll go over some of those.
Wow, okay.
So when it comes to deductibles, here's where you see a little bit of these differences. So for an individual, that is employee only. That's our cost. They don't have any dependents on our what Kairos calls the copay plan. It's a $750 deductible. You pay that until you hit that, and then it's a 20% your cost until you hit your max out-of-pocket cost. With Asbate, it's $800. So there is a $50 difference in that deductible, and that affects the pricing for the district. When it comes to someone who has dependents, and actually Asbate favors a little bit favorable in this, because when you have a +1, that's you're on a child and there's only one child, or you have a spouse that you have to meet a $1,500 deductible, and with Asbate it's a $1,600. Once again, it's $100 more, but over the whole pool, that extra $100 that the employee is paying if they use to their max deductible affects the healthiness of the pool, because it's not being taxed by the full amount of a medical bill. One big difference with Asbate is, well, Kairos has it if you have the individual +2.
Right.
So if you have more than one child, or if you're on the family plan, there is a $2,250 deductible that you have to meet, and with Asbate, they do not have that. It's just $1,600. So if you look at the difference, it's $50 more for individual, $100 for +1, but you're actually going to pay $650 less if you have 2 or more children, or if you're on the family.
If you have medical costs all the way up to your deductible, right?
Yes. And if you don't have medical costs all the way up to the deductible, then you never get to that 80-20 split. And thus, you're not going to have to worry about the next stat, which is the max out-of-pocket. So when it comes to the max out-of-pocket for an individual with Kairos, it's $5,500. With if it's more than one, if they have a dependent, doesn't matter if it's +2 or +1, it's $11,000. With Asbate, it's $5,100 or $10,200 for an additional. Which again, if you have a person, yourself, or a family member that you're needing insurance through the district, that max out-of-pocket for Asbate's actually less. Questions on deductibles and max out-of-pockets?
What are the high deductible plan limits? Do you know that?
So the high deductible plans, and here's where it's a little bit, staff are going to have some decisions what's best for their family. Right. Kairos has a very low high deductible plan. For next year, it's $1,650. You pay up to that, you pay up to that. Once you hit that number, you start the 80-20 split. Yeah. And the difference of the cost of that plan from our default, you have HSA deposits for the difference. Asbate's lowest high deductible is $2,600. Okay. And then for Kairos, the next is $2,500. So really, we have 55 employees that are within that low, high deductible. They will need to make a decision whether it's more beneficial for their family to go to the copay plan or to swing to the lowest of the high deductibles with Asbate, knowing that they're going to have $1,000 essentially more deductible that they'll have to meet before they hit that 80-20 split. With Kairos, their next or middle plan is $2,500, and for Asbate, I don't have that. Oh, I do. No, I don't.
There's 3 high deductible plans.
Yeah, so there's
Kairos and 2 under.
So really, when it comes down to the high deductible, Asbate's lowest one is very in line with Kairos's middle one. So if someone's on Kairos's middle, middle high deductible, they would just go with, I would think they would choose to go with ASBATE's lowest. And then Kairos's third highest, or the highest, which is 5,000, that's in line with ASBATE's middle offering. And then they have one even higher than that, which is 6,000 something. The difference when it comes to HSA contributions, because the plan costs less, the difference between those plans are lessened to an HSA. So depending upon what you choose, there's about a $90 to I think $200 difference that would be less in the HSAs due to the lower cost of the high deductible plans.
We did the math. One of them you'd get 6% less in your HSA, and one you'd get 5.5% less in your HSA. So it's not insignificant.
Yeah, and it's that lowest of Kairos's that doesn't align well with an ASBATE, and they will need to say, okay, we're going to go to the it's called the Silver Classic plan. That's now the default with ASBATE if the governing board votes to change. That's the equivalent of, that's what the district would be funding. Okay.
And I know you haven't got to copays yet, but do the copays remain the same regardless of whether you're on a high deductible or a regular plan?
No, because with a high deductible, you pay the cost all the way up until your high deductible. There isn't really a copay. And so if
Currently and if we switched.
yes, I mean, that is the way high deductibles work. You pay, even for the medication with a high deductible, you pay the medication costs until you hit your deductible, and then you do the 80/20. It's the reason why I am not on one of the high deductibles, because I'm on 7 high blood pressure medications, and it's not really good. I mean, it would not be advantageous for me to be on a high deductible, because every month I would pay for my full medication costs until I hit that high deductible.
That doesn't make sense.
And it's with
Because
each.
I'm on a high deductible plan and I pay copays. So,
Neither of these plans work that way.
well, that's a change in Kairos then.
Yeah, Kairos has been, I mean, what Brian described is the way Kairos is working for us currently. And
Okay. That's a change, because I'm paying copays now.
Are you on the district's insurance?
We're on, it's not PUSD's, but it's another district
Then-
that's the same plan.
And that's the difference. Because districts can have it
Okay,
either way, and we can look. I mean,
okay.
if for some reason I'm misspeaking, then I do know that it is similar for both, and so that would be something. But that's what I was told. And there's these little disclaimers on Kairos's where,
Okay.
you know, it talks about that.
Okay.
But really, when it comes down to it, I know both are operating similarly, so it wouldn't be a change.
Okay.
All right, other questions? You get to some of the copays between the default. And once again, little slight differences. That's the difference in why it is less of a financial cost for next year. A physician, $25 for Kairos versus $30 for a primary care physician for ASBATE. Specialist, it's $50 versus $70. I didn't put this up here, but I should have, and that's urgent care. That was a change for Kairos. They're jumping that up to $100 from $50 as a visit, and for ASBATE, it's $70. Okay. So that's a 30 to the favor of using urgent care, which is so much more beneficial than going to the urgent care. No, the emergency room. When it comes to labs, this was not the document I sent you the second time, Sarah. Please excuse on this document, there is a mathematical from your CFO that it doesn't have a dollar sign on the 60, and 60 minus 25 is not 30.
Ours is correct.
Your printout is correct.
Is correct.
So, I sent you an updated one.
I know, and I deleted the first one you sent me.
That's okay. Maybe I sent you the same one twice. And that would be on me. Either way, you know, you can, the numbers are correct, just the math is not. And so, you know, lab work, that was something that was a little bit higher than, you know, the $5 difference for a primary care physician visit. When it comes to drugs, when it comes to medication, again, a little difference. You know, $10 maximum for a generic versus $15 with Asbate. Now, when it comes to things like high blood pressure, you know, most of mine, you know, are $6 and $8. So you're not charged that max. It's just that if a generic was more than, you know, than that max, it caps off. When it comes to specialty drugs, yes.
Well, I want to clarify, my copays are on prescription drugs, not on doctor visits and stuff, so they're on prescription drugs.
We have essentially the same kind of copay. Good, okay. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, and with specialty drugs, it's 50% for Kairos of that cost, but no more than $200, I believe that's right, per prescription, and with Asbate, it's $230. Once again, these are the little things that are just difference within that makes it so that you're paying less. It's passing a little bit, I would say, of the cost to possibly the employee like myself who's on a whole bunch of medications. They bear a little bit more of the burden because the district costs are a little bit less. Vision, same thing, won't see any difference, it's VSP. Asbate's Dental is something called Asbate's Dental Administrators. We did look at that. It is not prevalent in the Tri-City area. In fact, I talked to a Delta Dental representative today, and they say you can either be a PPO in which they're contracted with a dentist or a dental premier, and a premier dentist, they get a little bit more money from the from Delta Dental, and they can only contract with Delta Dental. And there's 37% of our 285 employees that have dental insurance through us. 37% of them are with a dentist that have the dental premier, so they can only contract. And so with Asbate's dentist default program, essentially if they aren't on contract, you basically pay the street price of, like, you're not coming in. They'll still cover it, but it's not a discounted insurance cost or a contract cost. So we feel like we should reach out to Delta Dental to continue our relationship with them and have them give us a quote what it will cost as a district separately, because Delta Dental's up here so prevalently and Aetna's dental administrator is not. And basically, the basic difference is there's a $1,500 max benefit for both programs, and if we went with Asbate's Dental, the employees would hit that maximum really quickly because the cost would be basically as if you were coming in with no insurance.
So we're looking into Delta Dental and
Yeah.
getting information from them in the next week.
Hence the asterisks. And then the customer service. If the board votes yes to this, I have a letter on my screen, and my last sentence is, you know, this is strictly a financial move. Kairos has been a great partner for the last 5 years, and our assigned Kairos senior accountant, Jenna Rocco, has just been stellar. I don't know whether or not Asbate is going to match the customer service that we've gotten with Kairos. It is an unknown. We have let them know what's customer service we have received for the last 5 years, and they have big shoes to fill. And so that is something that should be taken in consideration. What's that?
Big shoes.
Big shoes.
Oh, big shoes. I thought you
Shoes.
said they have issues.
Not issues, big shoes.
And I'll just piggyback on that really quick and totally endorse what Brian says. Jenna from Kairos has been great to work with, it's really helped us through a lot of things. This, the topic of insurance came up in my superintendent's meeting with other county superintendents, last Wednesday, I guess it was, and several of the other districts in the county are already using Asbate, and they all said it's been terrific. So who will look exactly the same? Will they be as good as Janet? Probably not. Will they be pretty good? Other people have had a good experience with them, so we'll see how that goes. But Brian's right, it's unknown.
It is unknown.
So the survey to staff, what were the results of yes switch, no switch?
We did not ask specifically switch or no. We asked whether an Aetna was covered by their primary care physician. If this does pass, the next voting item, because of the savings, would be to have the governing board approve a 3% raise rather than a 2.5. And even with that 3% raise, it does still leave some money aside for future financial decisions like raises for next year or offsetting insurance coverage increases for next year. And I believe, there's about, anyway, you see that in the next voting item. So we did not ask yes or no to our employees.
Yeah, we
just
asked, do you have a physician that you can determine doesn't take Aetna? And again, of hundreds of employees who could have told us, about 100 did. They looked at all their physicians, and that pool told us there's 2 folks in town, one who you can go to the husband instead of the wife in the same office if you want. So it's pretty prevalent. On the flip side, it's real possible there's people who currently don't take UMR who do take Aetna. That's a possibility, right? We found one the other way. Maybe there's 5 one way. I reached out to the COO at the hospital who's on the PUSD Education Foundation board and said, what do you know of these? He didn't have specifics, but he said, I know Aetna is really widely used. Sarah, is it okay if I mention? Sarah's husband, Leo, works for Costco. They're one of the major employers in town, of course. They provide Aetna insurance. It's widely accepted. So that was our main concern at first when we said, wow, this really is going to save us nearly $250,000. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. We're not in a situation like Humboldt where it's raises or no raises based on this decision. You've got some flexibility that they may not be looking at there. But our initial concern was, is Aetna widely accepted? The answer is absolutely yes. And the next question was, are the plans roughly comparable? And you can see, yes. No. There's certain people in certain situations who are going to be money ahead, certain people in other situations who are going to be money behind, but on balance, it's pretty close, particularly given that the overall cost of the district is $218,000 difference. So based on that, nobody likes change. It's going to be a big hassle for everybody at this dais if you say do this, but we feel it's in the best interest ultimately of the students in our district to make this change, so we're recommending it too.
And I think Mr. Tenney led it really well when it came to, our first plan was the budget package that was brought forward to you at the beginning of March, which had a 2.5% raise. That's already been approved, and this will add an additional 0.5% raise. But at the same, and at the same time, there are some, like I said, there's some minor tweaks that, that make Aetna, and given what our cost is this year being lower than the 3%, when we get a increase next year, even if they both were going to be, let's say both we're going to be 7%, like I said in district leader team, 7% on more is more than 7% on less, so it's kind of basic math, and so.
I would like, I appreciate the comments, but I do want to make sure that we're keeping these separate. They're 2 items.
Yes,
this is a fiscal responsibility to us. It's a financial decision. I just want to make sure we're not blurring lines and no influence in our decisions between the 2. So just if we can have some clarity in that.
And my bad for mentioning
That's
that.
fine.
No, you're totally right, because there will be a separate issue coming up next. If you choose to vote yes on this, that gives you the option on the next item. If you choose to vote no, you don't have an option on the next side, but that's completely up to you. We recommend it based on fiscal health of the district and how that ends up impacting staff and students. We think it's the best move.
And I've done lots of conversations with ASBATE, and I've also had lots of conversations with Kairos. They both make good pleas on why we should be part of their pools, and one of it is over the first couple of years with Kairos, we had more bills paid than our contributions. We had a loss ratio higher than 100%. It's not been the last couple cases, and that's the reason why Kairos said, even though they had the pool being 14% as the default, they came back with a 3%. Actually, came back with a 5 initially, and then when they knew that we were shopping and we were seriously considering it, they went back and looked at even more closely our claims and the lack of large claims that we have in the future, and they lowered it to 3. And they do say that would be a continued way to analyze the districts, being location, claims, and loss ratios. And
so they look at us individually.
They do.
That's good.
So.
Clerk, can I ask, when you were meeting with other superintendents, did they have a similar experience this year with ASBATE doing a large increase like we saw Kairos doing, or were they not experiencing that overall?
Yeah, great question. I didn't get specifics from all of them, but there were a couple of, I don't say horror stories, but a couple of districts that their costs were going up over 20%, and neither one of them were Kairos, or excuse me, neither one of them were ASBATE, they were Kairos.
Okay. Sometimes we see companies that don't already have our business
Sure.
really undercut to get the business, right? I mean, we all have cell phones, so there we go. But we also, so I just want to be mindful of what does the future look like, and I agree, if they're both going to increase, they're both going to increase on, and this one's increasing on less money. But if they just try to make that up in their second and third year and eventually really exceed the cost of the other is what can take place. I don't know that ASBATE has that reputation of having large increases, so that's why I asked.
We got some feedback from them on what that might look like.
We did, last year they did some right sizing, and I believe their average increase last year was 7 to 10%. It was the largest increase that they've had in recent history. I think ASBATE's average over 10 years, I think it's in the 6%. And when we've been with Kairos, which once again, lower deductibles, lower co-pays, we've been at the 7. We've had 9. I think one year we had 8. Another year 7. So, and about 1% is about 45,000 for every percent.
I am worried, it kind of goes back to the comment about just them serving municipalities. You have police, you have fire, you have you have city workers. And I would imagine that, without the leverage of just us being in education, just education within ASBATE, I would hope that they keep that, and that's why they can look at us individually, right? But if we are in with Kairos, I mean, did they kind of leverage too much? Did they, now, and we're in this big pool where they have to increase because of the entirety of it. So to me, it makes financial sense. I liked the kind of the intimacy of it just being education focused. But it does concern me that Kairos, where it started off really strong and the trust was, they're a great partner, right? But maybe they kind of overextended themselves a little bit, and that's why we're seeing these increases. And it's smart for us to question it. From what I know, there comes a time of right sizing. When we were with our self-insured, we either were going to have to right size or join a larger pool. I mean, that really was, we had a cliff that was coming. And so this is Kairos's year to right size. Last year was ASBATE's. I do believe when it comes, because of the history we have with Kairos, I believe the 3% was warranted. I think they would have been fine with the 5% had we not been shopping and had them look a little bit closer. Because of the differences within the plans and what we contribute to with Kairos, I think the negative 2.2 underwriting was accurate, for us. At least that's what ASBATE says. But that is an unknown because we don't have a relationship with them, and there is always that worry that they want your business, and then next year, we'll be in. We did get a letter from ASBATE, so it is in writing that next year's increase would be no more than 8%. I asked for lower because they offered that to Humboldt as well, and we're healthier than Humboldt, and they said it's going to be lower because our average is 6.5%. It's not, and we're right sizing this year. So if it is part of information for the vote with ASBATE, we would not have any more than an 8%.
And we've never received such a written guarantee from Kairos, whatever it's worth.
Kairos did look at multi-year for us to see if we could. And just because high claims can be like that and ongoing, they felt if they gave us a multi-year, it wouldn't be beneficial to the pool as a whole and not good business practice. And so they did discuss that, and that was their decision. It's a tough decision. I would like to know, I did look in my sent emails, and I absolutely 100% sent Sarah the exact same document with, I think, a few spelling errors and the math that was wrong.
We already knew Sarah doesn't make mistakes. So
We were going to blame you.
That was a given. That was a given.
Sorry. Thanks. Any other questions, comments?
I just have one comment. I'm just impressed with the detail that staff has taken in this, and not just the number that they were concerned about, but the individuals and the employees. Very excellent presentation, and just impressed with the care that you take for the employees. Love it.
Yeah, who would be eligible, thanks Brett, that so like our school resource officer, or can they move over into this? I mean, if they see this as financially.
They're not employees of the district.
They would have to be
they wouldn't
employees.
eligible, yeah.
The only ones that are not employees that are eligible for our insurance is actually the governing board.
The which one?
The governing board. While you're serving.
Yeah, I got you.
It's been a long time since we had a board member take us up on that.
Has been.
Usually they're able to find a better deal someplace else with their other employer, but if you wanted to, absolutely. It's available per board policy and state law.
Yeah. And, it's a tough decision because I don't think you could go wrong either way. If we do go with ASBAID and it turns out that, hey, and we need to now be answered because we were undercut for our business. Nothing stops us from saying, hey, Kairos, would you take us back in 2 years or 3 years? In fact, there's a lot of districts that have to play that game just because it's just expensive. And with health, it's $4.2 million of an expense this year for our health insurance for our employees and with us not passing a single bit of that cost to them.
We just don't really, in business as well, we don't always have the luxury of not playing the game. Like, we have to bounce around somewhat because it's the only way to keep it affordable. And it's an unfortunate reality, but it's not very realistic anymore that we're going to stick with the same insurance throughout our lives. We are going to change it regularly. At least we do personally. We change pretty regularly as well.
And it's smart to shop. I mean,
Right.
When we first went with Kairos, I let Jenna know. After 5 years, we're going to shop because if we didn't, that's not doing our constituents, being our employees, right by.
Yeah. Change is difficult, but we have a responsibility to be as frugal with taxpayer dollars as we possibly can. If we get money, it should go to getting great teachers in front of people, not to insurance in a way that's not necessary. So,
yeah, my military retirement's changed 3 providers since in 11 years.
That Kairos changed providers on us partway through. That was I thought that was going to be a big deal. It was relatively seamless.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it'll be relatively seamless, but we're prepared to support people and give them lots of information if the board decides to make this move.
So I'm gonna ask for a motion in a second. I will ask for any further discussion if anybody has anything to say, but just to kind of get this out. So item 7B1, consider approving the resolution to join the Arizona School Boards Association Insurance Trust as presented.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second? Second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passes 5-0. Item 7B2, consider approving the revised 2025-26 budget package based on enrollment, projections, increases, decreases, and salary increase options as outlined in the attachment fiscal year 26 proposed budget package, revision number 1. Mr. Moore.
So there is one big change here, and instead of on the left-hand side in the upper part where it's, there isn't that.
Sorry, Brian.
That's okay.
It's blurry if I make it smaller.
Yeah, I know. In the other document, there was a cost for our health insurance being, now at that time, it said the 5%. And so this changed a little bit. And so when it comes to that cost, it's not up there. It does have the negative 2.2% in the middle column because that is essentially an increase of revenue or spending power for us. And what it had done, what it did to the right is it made the net, and I believe
Two pieces in the center column, of course.
Oh, and then also, yes, in the center column, instead of the 2.5% raise that it was voted upon in the March's board meeting, it does say 3. And so with that decrease of insurance cost for next year and the increase of the cost for a 3% raise, it still leaves us $159,000 to make hopefully really good decisions in the future. And that could be, next year's increase of insurance cost. It could be as much as if the land sale, the land sale goes to the vote to, in Arizona and that passes, but it's only for a particular employee category, and we want to make sure that all employees receive a raise. This could apply to the other employees. And so this provides $159 worth of flexibility with the 3%.
Actually, like 1,000 times that much.
Is that what I thought? Yes, it does.
Not $159.
Yeah, $159,000 worth of flexibility in the future, and a 0.5% raise more for our employees.
Which is about if we were to have decreasing enrollment beyond the 45 that we have, it allows for us up to probably close to 60 or 70.
Yeah.
To help cover that as well, if there were to, if
even
enrollment were
more,
to decrease.
$159,000. What do we figure? $6,700 per kid.
Yes, yeah.
Kind of the figure we use.
Yeah. I mean, we have some uncertainty in the future. Insurance, if we have, an 8% is still an 8%, and but yeah, it allows for some decrease enrollment if that. So we wouldn't have to have that negative number on next year's budget package, or once again, if there's an increase of compensation for teachers and classroom staff only, and not including facilities or transportation or administration, this could give opportunities to compensate as well more in the future.
And did we hear that it would, if it was to pass with the land trust, it would be effective this year, or what did we call it?
It isn't. Next year.
It would be 1 year from now that we would be, and probably wouldn't know exactly what that increase or who it was, for. That would be a vote to use the land trust, and then the legislators would figure out, who it goes to, and and I would figure part of that would have to be on the ballot for the voting for transparency of the use of the money. But I can guarantee you there's going to be some employees that are not included in that compensation.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Any other questions? You want to stall for Brett?
So we've
Probably
shared with
taking
you
a break.
before, this would be our recommendation if we did realize as much savings from an insurance switch as we anticipated. Might be the case, and now that you voted on that, this is our recommendation to you, that we squeeze our employee raise from below the cost of inflation to just above the cost of inflation. So that gives us a little bit of flexibility to do that. We typically don't recommend to you that we set aside $160,000. Usually, if there's money available, my recommendation is spend it on this year's kids and this year's employees. But given how ESAs have started to impact our enrollment in a way that's less predictable than our enrollment over the last several years has been, I think it's wise to set a little bit more aside than we typically would. And with your vote on the insurance, you've now got some financial flexibility to do that.
My voice was pretty strong in leaving some for a future decision that may need to be made.
And you've done that routinely over the years, right, Brian? I mean, you try to keep that so that we're not in financial issues.
Typically,
we made decisions to keep us. We are very, we can weather storms. Like a pandemic, if there wasn't, grants to help with enrollment stability and things. I mean, we are in position that we could take a hit and not have to lay people off mid-year.
That's absolutely the case, but rather than it being intentionally setting aside money each year, more often what's happened is we budgeted X amount and not spent the entire amount that we budgeted, and so been able to roll that forward. In this case, we're anticipating maybe that we'll be as frugal as we've been in past years, plus we're intentionally, additionally recommending $159,000 be set aside. And again, that could go right back to teachers and students next year, which would be my recommendation if we don't get eaten into with ESA-related unenrollment. We'll see how that all goes. Who knows?
All right. Any further discussion? All right.
So I'll take a motion to consider approving the revised 2025-26 budget package based on enrollment projections, increases, decreases, and salary increase options as outlined in the attachment fiscal year 26 proposed budget package revision 1.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 7B2 passes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for all the work on that. Like Brett said, that was, yeah, a lot of work. And I know you have a full staff. I know you don't like to take the credit, but.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
There's been a lot of discussion and effort. Brian's absolutely led it, but Kelsey's voice has been huge. Andy's voice has been huge. Maya Caldwell, who's on our DAT team as well. And then we've reached out to principals and said, hey, here's where we're at. Tell us what you think. As you know, we've reached down to the staff level and said, hey, we're looking to make some decisions. Help us with data. It's been a real group effort. Thank you for your.
Yeah, a lot of hard work by a lot of people.
Thank you. All right, item 7B3, consider adopting a proposed changes to ASBA policy BEDH. Andy.
Yeah, thank you. So BEDH is the policy proposal relating to public participation at board meetings. Just to kind of review our journey together on this topic, this is not an administrative proposal to the board with a new idea. This was really realizing that our longstanding practice matched some of our policies and policies and regulations, but not in BEDH. It was a little unclear, and so in February I brought this to the board with the idea of kind of aligning this policy with our current BEDH exhibit, which again was very clear on in order to speak at the board meeting, it needed to be related to a voting agenda item. So I brought the proposal here, and I'll read it really quickly. It says, any individual desiring to address the board about a topic that is agendized on the study and voting section of the agenda shall complete a form, and then the rest, of course, is unchanged. The board, I think, wisely wanted to think about this a little bit more. They, of course, discussed it at last March meeting to have a discussion around that, and ultimately requested that I bring this back to the board this month for a final vote. But that is this policy specifically around kind of reaffirming our practice of having public speakers only relating to agendized topics. So any questions on it?
So item D also says, we crossed out open call to public comments too, right?
Thank you. Yes, that, again, that was one of those areas that was a little unclear. We had on BEDH this idea of not using the open call language and then having that language in this policy. So changing that and including public comments rather than open call to the public. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any comments?
I just have a question to clarify. So the previous practice was voting items only, or was it agendized and voting items?
The previous, and I would say the concurrent, right, is this study and voting.
Study and voting. Okay.
Yeah, so we never have a voting item that's not
Study.
in the
There's
voting.
not two separate. It's all the same. It's all the same part of the agenda. Okay.
Right. So the practice has been the same all along. We've had a couple of speakers this evening urge you not to change your practice. I think they meant something else, but in fact, we're not asking you to change your practice. We're asking if you're interested in clarifying the wording in the policy that would solidify the long-term practice.
I have one question to help clarify it for me. How are we going to, how do I want to word this? Look into the idea of that Google form.
Yeah.
Is that part of this? Okay.
That's not part of this.
No, I know it's not part of this.
Yes.
I just want to know what direction.
But absolutely, yep, you've given us that direction, and Sarah and Kelsey have been working on that. They've also been working on math adoption and insurance
yes,
and
I
a bunch
know.
of
I
other
was
things, so
just
we're trying to
curious
get to it
as
as
to
soon
where
as
we
we
were.
can. But yes, absolutely, we're going to follow that instruction that you gave us, the direction you gave us last month.
All right, any further discussion, questions?
Yeah, I have a comment. I think, if we keep the policy the same, there's going to be some that are disappointed in in the public. But I want to challenge the public to reach out to us and to see if we will be true to what we say we're going to be, and give them an easier way to get an item agendized, to listen to them, to follow up with their comments. I do think that an open call to the public will detract us from the most important work that we do, and that's for the kids. And I've talked to a number of people that are related to the city council where they've made this change, and they said it's a disaster because people come and talk about issues that aren't in the best interest of the kids. And so I think this is appropriate, and I just encourage the public to reach out to us and see if we won't be true to our word about engaging them greater in our procedure here.
Yeah, and the piece that I struggled with was just the fact that, per state statute, we cannot comment on an open call.
right.
There's no discussion. But when you reach out to us, there's going to be a discussion. It's going to be a one-on-one. It's going to be known, and that's what we want to encourage. I just don't think it's the tool. I'm seeing it's not the tool for discussion. Unless we are, someone addresses us directly, that's the only time we can respond. And is that not correct? But in the way that our predecessors, right, they are the ones that kind of determined this or decided this, and I understand why. And it's a business meeting. This should be strictly business. That we when we go into a business meeting, we do have an agenda. We discuss what it's going to be. If it's a point that the public makes and we bring it and we want to bring it to the forefront, again, it's 2 members of the board that can bring it to the agenda for a voting and discussion, or the board president. So there is a tool to bring it forward. So to say that we are not to listen or burying or whatever it might be, it's one, if it's relevant, it's going to be broad. This board has shown that when we hear that if it's test scores or I've been on this board for over 2 years, and how many times have we discussed test scores? What are we doing better? And so if somebody isn't educated and knows that we've done that in the last 2 or 3 years, well, we have it on record that they can view that and so we may not bring it to the agenda because it's already been discussed. Mm-hmm. So we only have 2-3 hours, or 4 or whatever hour we're on.
Don't say 4.
To discuss. Tell me about it.
We're trying not to do.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just where I'm at with this, and I appreciate what our predecessors did, and they define this as, we want to hear from the public on issues that we are going to vote on so that they have a say and we can make an informed decision. And it's a good tool.
And I can honestly say to you all, I have been on the fence on this issue, and I've struggled more with this than many things in the past. I've contacted former board members from this board that are no longer even in town. I've also contacted several board presidents from the area to speak to them about their feelings on this. And the reason I brought up the Google form is because I think that's a very good alternative to get what the community's thinking that might not be on our agenda to our attention. And especially when we say, do you think this should be on the agenda? So I think then
you can choose to agendize
and I think they can very easily then get it on the agenda. And Brett, you had said something last month that stuck with me, in that if we went to just a complete open call to the public, it would be easier for them. It was more difficult for us to get something on the agenda than it is for a citizen just to come in and say whatever they want to say for 3 minutes prior to our meeting. So I put a lot of thought into this before I decided to vote tonight. And the idea of the Google form helps clarify for me, even though that's not what we're voting on.
Sure.
Where we're going with that makes that much more clear to me and makes it easier for people to really get involved. And I will say our website is not difficult.
If there's anything we can do to make,
I went on today.
I want to take that feedback and
as
see if there's anything we can do to make it
I went on the
simpler.
website today
board
as if
right
I
at the
wanted
top,
to
click, and you're
contact a
there.
governing board member. It's right there. It's right under governing board. Each one of our emails are there. It's pretty
I think it's
easy.
one click, it might be
Yep.
two. You'd have to be a
Might
pretty
be one
confused
click for
person,
the
I
governing
think,
board and
to-
one click for the person.
There you go.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is that approving this doesn't prevent the board in the future from changing
That's
That's right.
policy again and incorporating an open call if that's what we feel is the right thing to do. So this is just aligning our practices with our policy. And it doesn't ever stop us from
Changing it.
going.
And
This
if-
was brought up in June
I
of
know.
last
If-
year. We're
if-
discussing it
yeah.
again,
If we
so.
were to go to a Google form eventually, and we'd try it out. We see if that's gonna help people feel like they're being listened to, and if we're still not happy with that, then we can change the policy.
And my recommendation for Google form didn't mean to anyway insinuate that we shouldn't have our emails available.
Right.
People still should be able to email us, which may be more simple or something they're more familiar with if they have a way to reach out through email. So.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. Consider adopting the proposed changes to ASBA policy BEDH. Take a motion.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item 7B4, consider adopting the proposed changes to ASBA policies. Andy?
Yeah, thank you. This is actually several policies. Thank you.
Now it is.
Okay. Several policies and regulations that, interestingly, are actually kind of reverting back to policies we had mid last year. Most of these adjustments and changes are related to the Title IX regulations being shared at the federal level. Since 2020, new regulations came out. We changed policy back around that time. And then I think it was August or around August, some final rules came out around some new regulations at the federal level. So like was discussed earlier by our ASBA presenters, they recognized that, they made some policy changes, presented it to us. The board voted on it again earlier or late last year. So then that was the 2024 regulations, and then as I think it was early January, those 2024 regulations were struck down, and which at the federal level again meant the Title IX definitions reverted back to the 2020. So again, our policy was changed there for about I think it was maybe 3-4 months, and the proposal now is more or less to return to the policies that we had before. So just that's a little bit on the history and why all these changes. Just to give you a little explanation, I went over it briefly last month, but again, the Title IX regulations changed to some of the more significant changes that are included in this. One of the things is the definition of sexual harassment. Again, a lot of these are very minor. Some of these are just a word here or there, but have a significant meaning. One of those is they changed the definition of sexual harassment to include both an incident that's both severe and pervasive instead of severe or pervasive, right? So kind of increasing that standard for a definition. One of the changes in here, there's a lot of explanation in here about if there was an incident, what the process looks like, who's involved, what steps they have to take, what timelines they have to follow, what forms they have to use. So one of the changes to this newest proposal is it has to be a formal written complaint as opposed to just maybe an oral complaint. There's again, as the Title IX coordinator, there's a lot of specifics on what steps I would have to follow. So again, like I said, a lot of timelines related to that. There's some specific requirements. One, for example, where an incident took place. If it, for example, there's If it takes place outside the United States, it can't qualify under this definition as Title IX sexual harassment, whereas the old policy said it could. So, a few changes like that. As you scan through these policies, you'll see a lot of things crossed out, a lot of things added. If you look closely, a lot of those are actually just moved around from one policy to the other. One of them has, they've removed references to sexual discrimination from one policy, or sorry, not sexual, references to Title IX, because again, the Title IX definition changed. So there's a lot there, but I think I summarized the key changes, and I'm open to questions, and I'll do my best to try to answer them.
It was a long read.
It was, and when I first looked at it, I said, "Oh my goodness, there's a lot here." But again, like I said, if you looked a little closer, you'll see a lot of them just kind of got moved to a different section. They kind of removed it from one area and put it in another.
I went back and looked at everything that had been crossed out and then found it almost verbatim.
Right.
A couple paragraphs later.
Exactly.
Or on the next page. Just for ease of read.
All right, any questions for Andy? No, you're catching us.
Yeah.
Last page is
Thank you, Andy, for diving into all that.
Okay.
This is why we're thankful for policy.
Yes.
Well, I was
Policy
thinking that
advisor
as
people
well.
that
That's
do all this. If we had to do that all ourselves, we would never be able to
Can you
keep
imagine?
up.
Right.
No, it would be
I don't know how
impossible.
the Carmens do it. Like, just like
Yeah,
read law. all
so
the time.
hard.
Okay, we'll take a motion to consider adopting the proposed changes to ASBA policies.
I'll make that motion.
A motion, do we have a second?
I will second it.
Motion is second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, we're moving on to item 7B5. You guys want to take a quick break, or you just want to plow through?
Go.
I'm good.
All right, buddy. I already took my break.
Yeah, he took a break. He's like, I don't need a break. I already went.
Plow through.
All right,
We're almost there.
just thought I'd ask.
We're almost there.
Okay, good. All right. Item 7B5, consider approving the IGA between PUSD and EF High School exchange.
Great, and I have to admit, I looked over this with Sarah 3 times, and we've got some wording that is different than I intended. IGA, again, is between government agencies, and this is not another government agency, it's just another organization. So it should say MOU in the title, just like it says in the relevant information. So I apologize for that. It's effectively the same thing.
Is it an
agreement.
IGA or?
No,
It's an MOU. It's an MOU.
And in the packet, the one we actually have
That
is
says-
an MOU.
it says
Yeah,
MOU.
it does say
Yes.
MOU.
Yeah, it's just different terminology for essentially the same thing.
So in voting, we need to make sure it's a MOU.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's on me.
I'm pretty sure it was Clark.
I am so happy right now.
This one is not on Sarah, it's on me. She's too kind. So we've already got an agreement with one organization, Educatius is what they call themselves, to, for them to bring to us potential foreign exchange students and find host families to be at Prescott High School. That's worked well through the years. There's provision in our board policy for us to work with more than one company.
Now it looks.
EF is the same parent company that runs most of the trips that our kids take, for whatever that's worth. It's an organization we've worked with a bunch in another realm, so we've got a good track record with them, and know that they're good to work with. And they have agreed to follow the same parameters. Students with a slightly different visa status, it'll actually be a little easier for us to work with on the PHS end in terms of initial paperwork, but still bring tuition dollars to the school district. And it would still be up to the principal of the high school. He delegates that, I think, to Mr. Woods, but does that in consultation with the district leadership if he needs to. How many students and which students to take, it wouldn't be just, we're opening the door, anybody come on, whoa, there's more than we thought at all. It's just would set up a mechanism for us to work with an additional company. And again, it's a company we're familiar with, and we recommend to you that you allow this to move forward.
Okay.
What questions do
So
you
we're
have?
working with 2 then?
We would, if you vote on this,
Possibly.
there would
If
be
you vote
2
on the pilot,
companies
this
that
would be a
we
pilot
would have
for when?
approved.
Okay.
And I want to say that several years in the past, we had an MOU with EF and it expired. They didn't have others. There's a family currently who has been working with EF that's interested in having a student come, and that, it was brought to our attention last month, I want to say. They came and they saw the trip to Zeitz, Germany on the agenda, and they thought, oh my gosh, this is a perfect opportunity to talk to the board about kids coming and going overseas, and we clarified for them, they're giving permission for our kids to go there. They're not giving permission, or they're not considering an MOU with your company, but we can get you on the agenda next month if you're interested. And they said, we sure are. So talked with Adam. He said, yep, this works for me. Jeff Wood, I think, gave the same feedback, and my experience in that role at the high school and at this level tells me I think this is going to be something positive for our kids.
How many exchange students do you have right now?
I think that it's lower than we expected, but I believe that we still have about 5 or 6 kids
Yeah.
for second semester.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
It's weird,
fine.
sometimes they do a semester and sometimes they do a
Yeah.
year, so knowing how many go through, but we, whatever it's worth, super thorough process to make sure we're getting kids who are gonna be successful, and then we just have wonderful kids who go out of their way to welcome them, so it's a nice pairing of two things.
I think the more kids, the better. I think the more our kids are exposed to different cultures and people from other countries, it's far better. So,
You know,
I
you're
love
talking
it.
about diversity there.
Oh, that's not allowed, but I love it. I think it's so
Every
great.
year they ask, you know, how much do we need to pay you? And I figure out exactly how much we receive from the state for a high school student, and
That's what they pay.
they wire transfer that money.
Yeah.
You're totally right. Getting additional perspectives from kids is a
Yeah.
real neat thing. We tend to be pretty insular here at Prescott, and this is one way to open people's minds
Yep.
to other things.
One of my boys is going on the trip next spring break,
Okay,
a
cool.
year from now, with EF, and I am amazingly impressed with their
They're a really
with their
organized company.
communication,
No
with
question
everything.
about
I'm
it.
like,
Yeah, it's great.
to feel good about like sending your 16-year-old across the country,
Yeah.
across the world with someone. They seem quite well organized.
I'll tell you as well, our family hosted an exchange student from Finland and one from Taiwan, I don't know, probably 5 years ago now. And it was a really neat opportunity for our family and for our daughter, and I think other kids at school to get to know them. And in addition to those two great young ladies who I think had a terrific experience here at Prescott High School. Adam's right, they just go out of their way to make sure this works well for everybody.
I agree. I also have valued from foreign exchange students being in our programs.
Yeah.
It's just
It's
fun.
great.
Good.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. Well, so we can take a motion to approve the MOU between PUSD and EF High School Exchange Year.
So moved.
A motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, good deal. I just want to put it on record that when Mr. Tenney exited the room, he got a crackle piece of chocolate, and there's 13 other people in this room. And,
I think there's about 13 things left in the candy dish. I would be happy to
buddy.
help refill it. Should I go get it? Because we are moving into hour 4 here. Just want to point that out. So I'd be happy to bring some refreshments.
Thanks. Yeah. Then Brad's got to go to the bathroom, and then we got to, like, that's a whole thing, right?
We can totally make do.
I know. All right. Item 7C1, Brian Moore, Chief Financial Officer, has prepared the school board budget summary report for your review.
All you're getting is as presented.
Attaboy. All right. All right, item 7C2, anybody have any questions?
No.
All right, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, all right, review the proposed changes to ASBA policy BEDB, first reading. Andy?
Yeah, this is the first reading of BEDB, which is the policy related to the board agenda that provides not only the sequence, but also just kind of some general guidance. It was recommended that we look at the section, what is that, F2, and just to clarify what community comments shared with board members means. The proposal that is included here was kind of suggested as a kind of a positive way to frame this, but still kind of get the point across. So it is, board members are encouraged to listen to community members and share their concerns. These comments should be summarized and condensed to reflect the intention of the community member. Although open meeting laws will not allow for discussion on unagendized topics, these concerns can be considered for future agenda items.
That's some pretty solid wording there.
I think so too.
Well done.
It's like a dentist wrote it.
It's like a dentist wrote it.
That's some
It has
Michigan
all the
University.
hallmarks of it.
My fourth grader to buy a jet helped me with the wording. Great teachers at buy a jet.
That's true.
Any initial questions on that? Again, this is just a first read.
Yeah. I mean, at first glance and just reading through it, I mean, it is a solid statement, and thanks again, Brett, for writing that. Really encompassing.
And just to, again, say that I think this is a great idea, that we're adding this part to our board meetings where we get a little more of exactly what the community members are sharing with us, because I think this is an important thing that we do.
Yeah, those of you who've been on the board for a while, there's a significant difference.
It's very, very
in
different,
this
and it's a
part of
welcome
our agenda,
difference.
right?
I like it.
Andy goes back several years now.
You know, I want to appreciate the two of you for making this more professional than it has been in the past. I do think if we ever were to go to an open call to the public, this would be the place to put it, not necessarily in BEDH. But that's not.
For future reference.
That's for future reference.
Well, it comes up about every 9 months, so.
And I also want to say again, back in 2021, I think, is when we initiated this. Based on concerns that we weren't listening to what the community had to say, but we didn't want to do, that board did not want to go to a full open call to the public, so we inserted this option at that point. So to be back discussing this again is kind of infuriating, but I understand.
There's one part here, and I just highlighted it, it's under the accommodations for the disabled. I just wondered if we're gonna have a policy, there is a portion here where, it lists Sarah specifically. Lord, we don't want Sarah to go anywhere, but changing this wording with her name in it, I think we should make it kind of generic and just say, keep her name out, administrative assistant to the governing board, use the number, extension, and I wouldn't even use the email, but that's a means to reach. So then we don't change the document, in the future. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Is that consensus direction from the board? Great.
Yes.
Are you comfortable with us making that change and coming back to you with a second read with that sole change next time?
Yes.
Where was that you were referencing?
The last page.
There's specifics about what to do if you need accommodations.
Okay.
I think that's wise.
I see. Yeah.
It can certainly be changed if, in 22 years when Sarah retires. But if she wins the
Sarah only has
lottery
to work
and
22
retires
more.
earlier than that or something, it's probably wise to not have to come back.
She's like,
That's Leo's.
Good, okay. Great.
Got it, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so next one, sorry, item 7C3, 4-day school week. Mr. Tenney.
Okay, yeah, so, you bet, absolutely. I think I mentioned to you when we first brought this up during our board retreat a couple of months ago that I'm not necessarily in favor personally of this. I'm not necessarily against it either. I want to make clear. I'm ambivalent, for sure. I can see some potential real positives for the district and some, difficulties as well for the district and for families, both directions. But I did have enough staff members, come to me pretty regularly saying, hey, you should approach the board and talk about a 4-day week like Chino does. It's been great for them. It used to be uncommon. It's super common throughout the United States. There's 3 large districts, even down in Phoenix, that are doing this now. The board should be approached with this. So I approached you, and your direction was get information from our staff and from parents. I tried not to make the questions leading. The question is this: would you support or oppose a future PUSD shift from a 4.5-day week to a 4-day week? I didn't think that was leading. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyhow, the same T chart that I shared with you in our board retreat was shared with parents on that survey, and then people gave us feedback. And you've got the graphs, I think, in front of you. Sarah's got up on the board as well. And then I shared with you every one of the comments. And how many comments were there? I can't remember. From staff, there were approaching, 200-plus comments, and with parents, there were well over 300. It was, one of them was 12 pages long, and one was 22 pages long, and every comment verbatim, with the exception of I took out a couple of nasty words that some parents had chosen to include, and swapped them out for non-nasty words. But I think other than the profanity, everything else is exactly as written. And I thought there were some really, really important pieces of feedback. Some people were very earnest in, you must do this, it's so much better for kids, and other people were really concerned about the child care aspect of what we provide. That, I'll be honest, that was a major concern for me when I brought this to you, so I talked at length with John Scholl, the previous superintendent at Chino Valley, and Cindy Daniels, the current one, and they both said, you know what, that was a big deal for us as well. It was a huge part of the discussion around it. People saying, you can't do this, it's gonna, so we bent over backwards to provide things within our district in terms of childcare. The community really stepped up and did a bunch of things, and pretty much everybody phased it out within a couple of years because people were not using it. So the reality versus the concern there was, there was a gap there in Chino Valley. Would that be the same here? I haven't the foggiest idea. We're 10 years later in a different community. That was the major concern that I saw over and over, and you got to see the results there. So I'd like to just be quiet and listen to you discuss what you think of the survey results you've received.
Well, I've been a working mom my entire adult life, and I've always felt the same way, like another day off would be really difficult. And I think one thing that was really difficult for me, possibly even more difficult than a day off, has always been our partial day, whether it used to be Wednesdays back in the day when my older kids were younger. But that actually presents a lot more hardship for me as a working mom, because now I have to figure out how to leave work, get them home. Even those who are old enough to stay home, they don't drive yet, so I still have to get them home, or I have to figure out what I'm doing with the younger kids after school because they're not on the same bus as their older sibling or whatever. It was always a nightmare, and it probably would have been simpler for someone to say, you're not going to send them to school at all that day and get a babysitter. So I think our schedule already presents a struggle for working parents. In general, school days do. You know, most of us, I was super fortunate to be able to work my kids' school schedule, but not everybody was able to do that. And so, but not very many people, I'm sure not very many people in your world, Stan, work school day hours, 8 to 2:30. And so I think for sure there's going to be some families that's a struggle for it. There might be some that it lightens the load because it makes their day a little bit simpler. Maybe they have an older child who can stay home but doesn't drive yet, or whatever that might be. But it is, I don't think we can make everybody happy. I noticed some of the comments were like, why is the board wanting to do this? And it's interesting because it was not at all brought by the board. Yeah. Like I don't think any of us even had it on our radar that much until we went on some listening tours. A couple of teachers mentioned it to us, but it wasn't an overwhelming number. I think they come to you about that a lot more. So
I'll be honest, I was not surprised by the staff response. What was it? A total of 77% of our staff said they're in favor of it. That didn't surprise me. That's an overwhelming number, but it's what I've been getting in the hallways. What did surprise me was the overwhelming number of parents who said they were in favor of this. That blew me away that we had, what was it, 76% of parents, I have to add this up again, but a huge percent of parents, mid-70s of parents, said three out of 4 parents said this is what we want to do. Now, there are a lot of parents who said they didn't want to do it, right? That represents hundreds and hundreds of people, and for some real reasons. So there's a lot of deep thinking and discussion to do here. One thing I would under no circumstances be in favor of is what several people said in their comments, which was, don't wait, do this right now. I mean, we made clear in the survey, there's no way we're doing this right away. If it happens, and if was in capital letters, we'd be looking at something for the following school year at the earliest. And I was surprised by maybe a couple of dozen people who said, what are you doing? Do this yesterday. There's not enough runway for us to roll this out soon. So even if you're all super excited about it, if you tell me, I want this to happen on July 31st, I will lose my mind.
This is a hard thing because I really feel for that quarter of the respondents, of the parents respondents who, I mean, that tugs at your heart.
Amen.
I'm a single parent. I have to figure out how to take care of my elementary age kids on a day that you're not gonna have them in school. But the other side that you look at is, are you looking at sending them to other schools? Because most of the other schools in this area are on 4-day weeks. So if you think a charter school is gonna be better for you, there's not many charter schools that are doing that. And I don't know about private schools. So this is the hard part, I think, of being an elected official, is what gives you more weight in this discussion. I mean, I'm having a real hard time with that in considering this, because that smaller group
Pulls on your heartstrings.
yeah, pulls at me more than yeah, let's do it. Plus, I also do believe that a lot of people don't understand what this means. And I know when I was working at Embry-Riddle and we had 4-day work weeks in the summer, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Everybody loves that extra day off, but I could not stand going in early and getting off at the same time. And I despised it. I went in late and I left early just to kind of show them that you're not going to tell me to do this.
Tenure, right? You had tenure.
Yeah.
Can you kind of glitch the recording there
I
for a
can't
minute?
be fired, so.
I have a question. I have a question about classified staff versus certified staff. Is there any way to break out the different respondents based on the classified staff versus hourly staff?
Got it right here. I was hoping you might ask. Yeah, so we asked, obviously, part of the survey data. The graph didn't automatically appear, it's just the questions asked, but yeah, I did. So there was a difference, and there was a significant difference between classified and certified. Certified staff, 213 certified staff took the survey, 82% of them supported it. So it's, I mean, you can't get 82% of people to agree that water's wet. Oh my gosh. For classified staff, I thought it would be like vastly different. And there's a gap for sure, but it's still 2/3, 67% of classified staff.
And how many
hourly
took the
staff
cert?
said that they're supportive of it.
Oh, I guess I could do the math.
I think as a
100.
kindergarten teacher, I would have been part of that minority.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
There
sorry,
absolutely
but I
are staff
just
members.
can't see.
Hopefully, you really, if you haven't had a chance to yet, you really will look over each of the comments and take a chance to digest them, because I think that will impact your thinking and your discussion, your decision-making around this a lot. It's real easy to just look at this and say, oh yeah, 2/3 of people, 3/4 of both staff and parents like it, let's do it. But boy,
But the comments are
more
what
to it
really
than that. Yeah.
gets you, yeah.
And personally, that's when I started digging, and I asked, so first, I had asked a parent who is now a teacher at one of our schools. She does lower grades, and she said, when those kids come back from recess or lunch, that hour and a half, and you would know, is crazy time. It is so hard, and you want to add an hour to this? Like she's, and then parents are like, I appreciate the comments that they're, my evening time is limited as it is. Now we're crunching even more of that time. The one that really, it was a weird comment, I'm just gonna say it, but it was the guy that, I assume it's a guy, but he's like, I'm a product of 4-day, and I live on my iPad, I live on, I'm a product of this. I mean, it was an oddly worded one, but it was like, when I look at that as a parent, is that extra day off gonna be fruitful? Is it really gonna be something that, honestly, all of our kids are gonna sit down and do their homework or do whatever it might be? I worry about that. There's also parent comments that were for the 4-day, and then their comments were, well, there's options like the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA. But the counter to that was, the comment that I received was, well, you know what? These parents choose to go to Abaya Judd and Taylor Hicks and Lincoln School. But now we give them an option to go to the YMCA where the environment is not what they chose. So those are the concerns. And so the employees that, I looked in the face and they're live in Chino and they've got young kids and they're like, well, how is the 4-day? They're like, we hate Fridays. It is so hard. You know, I can't find coverage. Some days I can't work because I can't get coverage on that Friday. Because a regular work week for majority of the workforce is a Monday through Friday workforce. And then the, God dang it, I was on a roll. It'll come to me though. Anyway, so those were the comments that I was getting, and it just kind of hit me hard. Like, I said, factory setting. I rarely like to put in, compare education to business, but this is really kind of another business decision. If I asked every one of our salary employees, you have a day off? Heck yeah, they're gonna say, I'm getting the same amount and I get that day off. You bet I'm gonna take that day off. But then some of the comments concern me where they said, hey, if that Friday's off, am I still expected to come to work? That concerns me a little bit, that's like,
Right, well, I have to come for like PD and that.
Yeah, but they'd rather be in the classroom, honestly, which is great. But do I still have to come to work, So it's not worth it.
I think that question was in the vein that Jen's suggesting. Chino Valley, they do have one Friday quarter. And we have to do PD sometimes. It's clear that we're not going to do a lot of PD after 5 o'clock in the afternoon or whatnot. So what would that look like? Yeah, that's a reasonable question.
Yeah, but we also have hourly employees that, until their pocketbooks shrink and they see that, you put them in a situation where they may not understand the second order effects of this, where, oh my gosh, I may have to get another job. There were bus drivers, obviously, that were concerned, am I gonna maintain my insurance? These are real concerns. And it's not just the quarter of the pie that answered they're not in favor, but how many didn't take the survey? That just for in any survey, my voice doesn't matter, but they're gonna feel the effects later. So I'm with Andy, kinda like, I'm concerned with that population, to be honest with you.
Tell you, we've never given a survey with better response than this. I think you've got a pretty representative response. I wouldn't worry too much about that, but I'd worry a great deal about what you were told, both positive and negative.
And again, I know you guys are gonna say something, but I also, we're not up against the wall on this financially. And I think that's why the board hasn't presented this, is we're seeing the numbers, we're giving raises. We're not in a financial situation, but by gosh, if that happens 2 years from now, we're in that situation, well, we already kind of have a survey that says it wouldn't be horrible, but we can at least explain to the public that we need to do this. So, and that's kind of what Chino was at that point in time.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's a financial issue for
That
them.
was the main reason that they moved to that. And you're exactly right. There's no financial necessity for us to do it. Would there be a financial benefit? Unquestionably. Would it be massive? No. Would it be significant? Yeah. In my mind, that's one of the top 3 reasons you might want to consider doing it. I kind of just wrote down. Recruiting and retaining employees, clearly popular with employees. We're routinely out-recruited by Chino Valley, in spite of the fact that there are recognized different conditions there that make it maybe not quite as attractive in other respects. People are like, I'm going there. And then you're maybe looking at $500,000 cost savings a year. That's a big-ish deal. Is it a game changer? No, but it's a big-ish deal. And the third one is that Chino's data lines up with survey data nationwide, which is once people move to this, 80+% of people say this is a good idea. There's not too many things you decide that 80+% of people say it was a good idea.
Yeah. I think one concern for sure is what are our kids in our community going to be doing on that day, and will it really be productive? It is great, like on the weekends you're going to go somewhere where you have an extra little bit of time you get to travel or whatever, but for the most part they're going to be, I know what my boys would be doing, they'd be sitting playing video games most of the day while mom's at work. And so is that productive? Is that beneficial to our kids as they're growing up, especially if they're younger and not have as much supervision? That can also be a bit of a struggle. But one thing I'm wondering is on our teachers that responded. Do we have any data from the special ed side other than the comments? There were several comments made about special ed, but is there any, did we gather any information as far as?
We break it out by,
Okay.
by do you teach special ed,
Yeah.
et cetera. No.
I noticed several teacher comments in the special ed vein had a different opinion, and so I was just curious if we had any
Worth paying
data
attention
around
to
that.
for sure. No specific data around that.
Yeah. Both, our ESS program, our ED program, those are things that give families some
Respite.
and keeping their kids engaged when they really may struggle to do so at home. So
Absolutely worth
on that note is one question I had.
So just an observation that I had when reading some of the comments was a lot of families didn't really feel, and teachers, I don't know if they had enough information to truly decide whether they were on board or not. I think really what it would come down to is looking at what is the daily schedule, what does a weekly schedule look like, what does a teacher schedule look like, what does a para schedule look like. But also, I think one of the things we haven't talked about is what could those Fridays look like. And I think that's an important piece because that could be an opportunity to restructure some of our clubs where we could offer some pretty robust opportunities for students that we're not able to now. So we could increase, enrich, or reteach opportunities for kids using 21st Century Club money. That could also be an additional time for whether it's paraprofessionals or certified staff to make additional money. So I think that there's some more things that we can explore.
Childcare, right?
Yeah, right. It could be childcare, or it could be an academic focus.
Reteach, enrich,
Just based off of a lot of what other districts are doing. So that's one of the things that if we do decide to move forward, I think providing people with more information so they have a better picture of what this would look like, because I think that they're making some decisions or responding to the survey based on what their assumption is about what this is going to look like, and they need a better picture.
Yeah, maybe that's it, it's like a 4-day academic, 5th day enrichment, something like that. We're not saying, I love the idea of the CTED model. I mean, god dang it, when Miss Bailey heard that, she was going to work. And I see some merit, and you're preparing them for college, because that's what they're accustomed to, kind of that. And I can see that there's some merit in that piece where give them a full day, get them out there, then they can do the extracurricular activities and everything else. So there was a lot, the comments also that I got, and this was from teachers, well, you know what, if you increase my time, I really do appreciate the time that I have, in that afternoon for whatever they're gonna do. But then they were like, maybe extend it further into the summer. I mean, I heard more comments about extending it, because then families don't have to find out, something to do for 2.5 months, during the summer. Like, it's hard. It's even harder in the summer to find camps and everything else for all these kids. So that has some merit too, but it doesn't go towards our cost, It doesn't help alleviate our costs, but anyway.
I think Kelsey's right. We'd want to get creative about what Fridays look like. There are some real
I'd be down with
neat
that.
possibilities. You're 100% right. The possibilities for CTE are really intriguing. And potentially for reteach and enrich as well.
That's where my head goes,
Yeah.
as a benefit. But I do think once teachers and staff see what an actual day and a week looks like, they might come to the same conclusion that you did, that those days are
You might
long.
recall what we shared on this chart that was linked, which was pretty broad. Kelsey's right. There's no specifics, but it said student days would likely increase by approximately an hour, with school days 7 hours and 30 minutes to 7 hours and 45 minutes long. They're currently 6 hours and 25 minutes to 6 hours and 45 minutes. So we'd be boosting up by almost exactly an hour. That was all that was shared. We didn't say we'd for sure start at this time at this school and whatnot. None of that information is shareable at this point, right? And then for staff, it says likely 9.5-hour days for full-time employees. Example, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. plus 1 5-day week per quarter for staff development. That's one example of what it might look like. So did people have no idea at all what it might look like? No, that wouldn't be fair. Did people have specific details about how it would impact them? No. So yeah, it could well have impacted people saying I'm strongly in favor versus somewhat, or I'm strongly opposed versus somewhat.
When we look at what impact it can certainly have a positive impact on the budget, but it also can have a negative impact on enrollment. It could have a positive impact on enrollment. So we don't really know that outcome, and that's a really hard thing to weigh. But one thing that Chino didn't have was ESA money at the time that Chino made that decision to move. And now families have so much more flexibility to use their state-funded money at their discretion that it could make it easier for people to choose not to keep their child in PUSD or give them another reason not to or something of that nature. So that to me is one of our biggest things we have to really pay close attention to, and I don't know how to identify it. I mean, obviously the survey looks like it's great, but if that whole quarter decided, well, we're not going to stay in PUSD, or even a portion of that, that could have a real detrimental impact.
Although I think it would change dramatically if Friday became an option. If parents knew that they weren't locked.
Friday childcare.
There was something. It changes
If
the
there was
whole-
transportation,
changes the entire
potentially.
Yep, it
Yeah.
could change a lot.
Which would help with bus driver
Right,
salaries.
there'd have to potentially be transportation for that, and then
which
you'd have
cuts
a
into
smaller
a-
fleet maybe running.
Cuts pretty, having that Friday when it comes to utility, cleaning.
It removes
Would
the
we
benefit.
would we provide lunch? Would we provide breakfast?
lot
Would
of
we provide transportation? That significant is the impact on the savings.
Right.
The
It would be
The other positives
much
would
less.
potentially still be there, but you're right, it would have or more of the savings,
Or more.
I think. I have a hard time imagining families who saying, I want my kids in school 4.5 days, you've moved to 4, now I'm gonna have them with me all the time. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna take an ESA. I can't take care of my kids 1 day a week, so now I'm gonna take care of them 5 days.
Well, I think that they might use it to go to a different school,
But they-
but,
yeah, yeah.
but I think I don't know what Trinity's schedule is. Are they off on Fridays?
It's on here, let's see.
Trinity,
Trinity
Sacred Heart was half day on
is-
Fridays. I don't know if they're still.
They are.
Still half days on Fridays.
Yeah, they're 4.5 still.
Yeah, so, you know,
I think
their
the
only
total
option would
number
be
of
to
open
take.
spots Trinity has currently is 0.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. I don't think there's a lot of places to go other than if they want to go to Humboldt. I'm not saying you should leverage your thinking around that at all, but I think
Right.
in reality, there's probably not a lot of other open options for people.
Would it be possible to do a pilot where we had one school went to 4 days, and then we could evaluate some of these? Okay, all these families moved to a 5-day a week, and all these families moved to a 4-day a week, and
Anything's
how does the test scores?
Transportation. There's no way we could.
Because that doesn't say.
It's the tail that wags the dog when it comes to that.
Yeah.
That's fair.
We wouldn't have enough
If
routes
we
to
told people you
provide
can do this and provide, and you know, we're now basis, you have to provide
Oh,
your own
sure.
transportation.
Sure, we'd have to bus them. We have to bus the other 2 kids home, and then we'd have to come back and bus the high school.
Is it possible? Yeah. Would I want to delve into the logistics of that? Not too much, but whatever you tell us to do, that's what we're here to do, is carry out your vision for the district.
I mean, would there be some merit if, you know, if we are truly up against it, and this is what, you know, we get direction. I mean, I would foresee you get a committee together that has stakeholders from each area and propose like 3 different options. Like, well, what does that look like? And let them come together, because this is, and if it's the premise, hey, we're financially strapped. We've got to figure something out here, and this is an option. But again, I don't think we're there. I'm not ready to give direction on it, you know, honestly.
It could be financially beneficial, but that's, in my mind, one of the 3 major negatives. I mentioned my positives. The negatives are the longer days for students and staff. There's implications of that I don't think everybody's thought all the way through when they say, yeah, let's do this. The other piece is the increased demand for childcare on families. We could mitigate that to some extent. There's no question about that. But we're not a childcare provider primarily, but I know that many people rely on us for that. And what do they do over the summer? What do they do on Saturday? Those are real questions. I get all that, but that's a major negative for me. And then the third is that much of the cost savings would come from our hourly employees or bus drivers and whatnot. I asked about that impact in Chino. Did you lose a ton of bus drivers? I said, no, we didn't. We were just fine. There no impact there. A lot of people were glad for the extra time. You know, they worked less and made less, but they were all right with that. Most of our folks are, you know, retired grandmas and stuff, blah, blah, blah. Would that be the case for us? I don't know. I don't think so. I know we've had a hard time filling our positions with bus drivers. But I was surprised to see of our hourly staff, 2/3 said, let's do this.
But there's a good chunk of hourly staff that wouldn't be as impacted, right? That
You're
would
right.
still work 40
Yep.
hours.
Yep.
They would work just the
Yep.
40 hours
Yeah,
in 4
maintenance
days.
folks
So,
wouldn't have an impact on them. Depending on how we do
classroom
things, it
people
might not have
Classroom
any
people
impact on
would.
parapros. It could,
Yeah.
depending on, what direction you give us and what model we take, but probably not a lot of impact on parapros. It's mostly, custodial service, which we contract out, food service, which we contract out, and bus drivers, which we don't. The savings would come from.
Right.
And that
Were the people who are
gives me heartburn.
contracted included in the survey?
No.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and the SSC and SFE, I mean, they're constantly having a hard time filling their positions. And so if now they're posting not a 40-hour week, it could impact them recruiting employees as well.
Yeah, Chino basically said with their bus drivers, we lost a couple people, but we gained a couple people who were like, yeah, Friday's off, awesome.
Yep.
I'm looking for a part-time job, that's what a bus driver is, and I get Fridays off in the deal, terrific. I don't know what that looks like. We could, Brian and I looked into, there are scenarios in which we could continue to offer health insurance to bus drivers, even if we scale back their hours, but we wouldn't have to scale back their hours. There's other, there's different options. Probably we'd want to scale back hours, I would think, just for the cost savings piece and not just. Humboldt, is it Humboldt or Chino that employs their folks throughout the day and they have them do different things between their routes?
I believe it's Humboldt.
I think Humboldt does that. That's an option we could look into. I'm not recommending anything, right? I just want you to have as much information as possible to get you all confused, I guess. So.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to give any direction just based off of what I've heard and what I received as far as feedback, and then also the survey, and then just looking at, when we net $159,000 for this year, we've been, there's just other options still, even in, moving forward. And I'm not prepared personally to give direction, but if any of you would like, and we have 2 board members, we sure as heck can. So.
I don't think it's anything we have to address today. Or in this current moment.
Timeline, I mean, we're not doing this quickly, so I think we have time.
Even if you were anxious as a majority of the board to do it for the following year, you don't have to do anything today.
I think we have to start with what Kelsey suggested too. You have to give them more information. More of what the schedule would look like, more about what Fridays might look like. There's a lot of stuff that parents and teachers.
Is that something that we really want staff spending time on figuring out when we're not prepared to move forward?
Unless you're
with it,
pretty
right?
committed to exploring
Yeah,
this
'cause
deeply,
that's
I
a lot
would
of time
recommend
that
it.
it would take to plan that out.
That's not something we're gonna do tomorrow.
Yeah, I would underscore what Sam said. There is no financial necessity for this. There's a financial benefit to it that comes on the backs of some of our lowest paid folks that gives me heartburn. I don't love that part of it, but every district who has moved that direction has faced that aspect of it and decided that the overall benefit for kids and families was worth moving that direction, but there is no financial necessity. 10 years ago, when we looked at this as a district, there were some financial pressures that were really pointing in this direction, but there wasn't enough. If I'm remembering correctly, in a couple of, Andy, I think you were on the committee at the time. There weren't enough other models out there for us to feel comfortable. This is workable. Now, there's no question this is workable. There's no question it's workable. Is it the right thing to do? Well, it's up to the 5 of you.
That recruitment piece is very tempting to me. I want the best teachers in front of my kids, but there are some unanswered questions for sure.
We're getting pretty darn good teachers as it is. It's not like we got to do something yesterday about teacher recruitment, but would you say it would?
I would, yeah. We absolutely are getting highly qualified staff applying for our open positions. I would say it's not just recruitment. It's certainly a retention issue. That's we're not certainly not financially strapped, but there's a reason that 75% of our staff are interested in this is from just an emotional and standpoint. So again, I wouldn't call it strapped, but they're looking for.
Yeah, let's not do the
support.
survey at the end of the school year too, please.
We have some of the lowest paid teachers in America when they say, hey, in spite of that, I'd be much more interested in sticking around if we went 4 days. That causes me to bring that to you at least.
Well, and I think we have to acknowledge that they completed a survey. We can't ignore the results of said survey and pretend they didn't say this is what we want.
Right.
Because then we're not listening to what the people in our community want. So it's probably something we need to make sure we're addressing, but I don't know that there's an urgency around addressing it, getting it on an agenda right now. But I do think if we've asked the question and we've gotten this kind of a response, it begs us to be considering it.
I feel like another question, like, I don't know, as like a student, I feel pretty back and forth on this topic as well, but I think, like, if you decide to go forth with like the information about teachers, I, like, as a student, feel like my like current Fridays sometimes lose productivity just because of like the shortened schedules, and I feel like teachers may, this is like an assumption, like obviously I'm not a teacher, but I think as a student it feels like it's hard to find like the time to fill what you need to, but in like the shorter time, it can be like awkward, I think, often on Fridays.
That's a reality.
Yeah,
Like,
Fridays are probably our least effective instructional day. I think you're,
And you have lunch on Fridays, which is a big chunk of that day.
And when there's an assembly and you have a snow day.
Right.
I know, but the 2 snow days, the kids are like, well, we're not gonna go to school, right, Mom? Like, we're gonna be there for like 2 hours, can we not go to school? It is tough.
people say snow day again, you're probably gonna have to scrape me off the floor, so.
Is it snowing out there?
Supposed to
It
snow
was
tomorrow.
earlier today.
Yeah?
So can I ask you guys a tough clarifying question? Only
Yes.
because I know that if teachers are paying attention, they know that this is a conversation. And staff know this is a conversation. So I would love to be able to kind of explain to them the decision that was made. Are we saying just not now? We're not ready to pursue it further now, due to not being in a financial, this not being a financial decision? Or what? Just help me with that response. I'm trying to formulate what I would tell our staff, because I know we're gonna get it. And we might even get it from families and community members. I just wanna be clear.
That's what I mean by we have to have something,
I
like, this
agree.
is a big response.
Yeah.
I would encourage them to reach out to a board member through the channels that we've established and plead their case, whether they're for it or against it. I think I think we have the survey results and we have all the comments, but I think if we're face to face with employees, that they ought to have access just like the community does to us, and we ought to keep an open ear. I don't think we have all the data, and I'd like to hear more from those that are for it and those that are against it, and keep it open.
And I'm wondering if maybe it's just a reason to call a special meeting somewhere down where we can actually devote 4 hours to this topic, discuss it, bring other people in, figure out what the survey, if we want to get more data, what the survey needs. I just feel like we did this, we asked you to put this survey together, and we appreciate that. But I'd like to maybe do a deeper dive into it to figure it out.
You're a brave man.
Well, and I say that knowing that, you know, it's
a hot button.
It is, and it's not something that's we're not gonna make everybody happy with any decision we make. But I think we really need to be careful and do this really carefully and gather all the information we need, because if we go this route, there's a lot of secondary impacts that are going to happen.
The enrollment part scares me.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. Especially, we have 2 buses that go into Humboldt because they like the education they get in PUSD, those parents, 5 days a week. And then all of a sudden, some of these other things become an issue. All it takes is, for half of a bus to say, no, we're going to stay in Humboldt because they're providing 5 days. There's all the savings, and so now we're in a cutting mode because of it scares me, and it's got to be thoughtful. And
again, this is anecdotal, but one of the comments, and I think it was, for some reason, the person identified themselves in their comment.
Yes.
They said, "What are you thinking, taking away another day of school for my child?" And I know that child and is not enrolled any longer. And I don't know if this was the result of just this question. You're thinking about doing this, I'm pulling my kid out. You know, again, it's not a great sample size, but I'm just concerned that we've already started that process of people saying, you guys aren't taking my best interest into consideration here.
Yeah,
So-
from some of the comments, there was definitely a sense that people feel like a 4-day school week diminishes the education
Yeah.
that the students are receiving, because there's concerns that we already have struggling test scores or various things at certain campuses, and they're wondering why would we reduce instruction time? And even though I feel like we've been clear that we're not reducing instruction time,
But are we? Because I still
Perhaps.
think the K and 1 teachers, we are reducing their instruction time.
So when I did look at it, because I started to create some models of what could this look like, what would this look like?
Kelsey's our expert on this, for sure.
Even if we kept the exact same number of instructional minutes, you're actually increasing the amount of instructional time. And that is because on Fridays, you don't have transitions, you don't have lunch. That's all now embedded within what that was. So you could either make the day a little bit shorter, so it's not quite an hour, or 50 minutes, whatever that length is. So there's some options within that.
Yeah, because passing time and lunch count as instructional minutes.
So the blocks are longer.
I think their little minds, can their little minds
I just think a 5-year-old by
take the
3
longer,
o'clock,
yeah.
they've had it.
Well, and you also have to think of, I mean, right now, we've got kids on campus until 4:30, and we've had them until 5.
Yeah.
So with after-school clubs and
Yeah.
things, those kids they're there right now anyway.
right.
It would take a lot of training for teachers, which is why I would ask for a runway as well. To how do you use that time, and how do you use it effectively? How are we engaging students? How are we working with them in those times where they might, not come in as with it after lunch? It might be a different. So we could work on scheduling. We could work on all kinds of different components. But that's a lot of time and training.
But if we look at it on the other end of the spectrum, I'm sorry,
No, that's
to the older kids, that Friday is tough. Those teachers are not getting as much accomplished in those short periods. And so we already are losing instruction time. We may actually gain instruction time when we look at our older grades, because they're going to have more longer focus time. Although I think there were some comments from high school teachers saying to fill that time would still be, it's too long. Like their class periods would be too long, but I don't know that they know what their class periods would look like.
And again, that's a training component. And Mile High is a great example because they switched their schedule this year and went from 55-minute blocks to 72-minute blocks. They did a lot of training of how do you fill that amount of time. So those are things that we would have to think about. It actually gives teachers more freedom to add in those engagement strategies, to add in enrich and reteach within their class structure where they don't feel like they have to get through all of their core instruction in 50 minutes. They've got an extra 25 to 30 minutes to now do all of those things that right now they just don't have time for within a 55 minutes.
I guess if we,
I was going to say, in Wisconsin, my 2 years teaching, we had 90-minute blocks, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Hands down, thought that it was the most productive time scheduling in comparative when I came here and taught in
At
Chino.
what level was it, Brian?
7th and 8th.
7 and 8.
Yeah, and I know that's scary for teachers right now because, again, that's change. We're so used to a 50, 55-minute block in our older grades. But it is doable, and it's been really nice to see that happen at Mile High this year, to learn from that experience and go, okay, what support do teachers need to enable to make that longer block work?
We did get a lot of comments that that were elementary, no, for a but go to high school, yes, 4-day. And so, I mean, there's some merit in that, although transportation-wise, how many high school kids really take a bus?
Yeah.
So what cost savings would we have there? Back to your question, though, Kelsey, is, what is our answer? I really liken back to, it is really that sometimes your decision isn't always the popular decision, right? Even though the survey seemed popular that, give us 4-day. My biggest concern, and by talking specifically to parents, teachers, and inside and outside the school district, was a real concern, and that was that quarter piece. And my concern is really for that quarter piece. And we don't have answers for them. And our second order effects are just, we just have no idea yet with the enrollments, with whatever it might be. Will we lose some teachers? I think what we've shown is, you know, we support our teachers in PUSD. This one may not be that one support where it's, you know, go to a 4-day. We get it. It would be amazing. Any salaried, you know, employee would love to go to a 4-day in any occupation. We get that. But it also comes down to, again, business model, the consumer. And your consumer are the kids and those and the parents for that matter. So are we giving them everything we can for that 5-day block? That's what they're accustomed to. We're not financially strapped. We don't have a retention issue right now. If we look at all of our key performance indicators, we are in good shape. And if we have a max exodus and then there's a revolt, well, then we probably should relook at it. But I don't feel like we're really in that situation to move forward. So that would be my answer to the questions.
Helps a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I would say, and if we have to give a direction, it's let's get this buttoned up, exactly what it's going to look like, at least conceptually, so that people really know what they're talking about here. And that's where maybe we need to have a special meeting to make sure, let's get this, if we're going to put this out there, we need to work towards that and present them with something that isn't like, hey, we just decided this in one meeting that we're going to move forward on this.
Oh, sure.
Let's get this buttoned up, a nice presentation that can say, this is what we think it's going to look like. Should we go forward with it or should we not? I'd rather do that and then have a vote than keep talking about it and having little bits and pieces coming to us every now and then. I'd rather get it all put together.
You know, I always think of percentages, and when you think like 75%, it really sounds like there's strong support for it. But if you just put that in numbers, that just means that 1 out of every 4 people are opposed to it. You know, so that means in this room, 3 of us would be strongly or somewhat opposed to it. And you just put it into that quantitative numbers, you know, 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5. There's a lot of opposition when you look at it that way.
Yeah.
So we give it an answer. You feel like that's a sound answer enough?
Yes, I
there?
feel like that gives me or us talking points when staff or families say, hey, why are we not pursuing this further right now?
Yeah.
So I'm hearing consensus is to table discussion on this until, or I'm hearing maybe a little different from Andy, dive deep right now and get some solid answers around this. Absolutely yes, absolutely no. But otherwise, I'm hearing maybe table this for now.
I'm saying table.
I'm good with anything. Frankly, I mean, if you ask my personal opinion, I'd rather have you tell me to table it, but I have a very hard time recommending to you that you ignore what 3/4 of your teachers
Right.
and families say.
That's where I struggle in tabling it entirely, is just the fact that I struggle in both sides, where we have this large group that wants us to address it, and then I also know the work that we're focusing on, that you're focusing on, particularly Kelsey, is very important work of getting us ready for all the things that are changing next year and all of that, and to have this as a distraction from the work that needs to be done feels overwhelming to me at the same time. So I do want the answers to how do we move forward if we were to look at a 4-day week, but at the same time, can that be our priority really right now when we are already moving in the direction we're moving with report card changes and trying to get our math scores up and our math curriculum instituted. You know, there's so many things that are really important and pressing that I'm not certain this takes priority over those things. Right. And it will be time consuming for you. Probably was just to give us the little bit of information you have like already devised, you know. So that's where I struggle, is I don't want to ignore the fact that these people have said this is really important to us. But I also heard from teachers often in our communication with teachers that they need a lot of support to get through what they're learning to do now. and we're already asking a lot of them, and to then also throw in, how are you gonna manage a different classroom schedule, feels like a lot.
That's thoughtful.
So I don't know. I'm not even giving a good answer.
No.
I'm just like
No, it makes
saying
sense.
all the things that
That's
are
very
not
Well,
helping.
one thing I will tell you is the time piece, if we ever were to dedicate some time, June is that time.
Okay.
We have most of July kind of planned out roughly, and then can't do anything until that. So all of these special projects, that's when those things happen. During the school year, it's much harder. So that would be the only thing with time, is that if we do
Well,
decide
thank
to
you.
do it,
That's good
this
to know.
would be ideally the time to start.
Perhaps we could set some specific time around June that we could identify at least what it would look like.
It's always better to go into something with a plan. We did the survey, that's an example of it. There's not enough information out there. You know, we just basically said, here, answer these questions, and, you know, without, and even the teachers that I spoke to, they asked, what does that look like? You know, if you take my time away, I can't, and then is it going to mean I'm going to work on Friday, and, you know, all the what ifs. So, you know, at face value, got it. 75% says, yeah, I'll take the day. But I'd love if we do, like you've identified, and maybe that's part of the response, identify during our summer break when the staff is, you know, after you take your break, much deserved, then you come back and you come up with, what are those courses of action? What does that look like to us? We can review it and then provide more direction.
Good.
But I do like the enrichment piece. I do like the CTED, you know, possibility. There's some merit to this. And are we taking care of those kids? It's not babysitting, it's enrichment time, and it's presented as, we're still a 5-day school week, but it's not your traditional go in the classroom 5-day week, you know? What does that look like? But there's some merit to it.
I also like the idea of being able to honor the survey and say, we are researching this, you know, and we are looking into it more deeply. You had mentioned a committee that oftentimes people form, you know, schools will form a committee to determine whether or not this is wise. Is that something a committee would be done over the summer, or is it that would just come into play after the work is done by staff?
Each of us are, 12-month employees, and it is true, there tends to be more flexibility, particularly in the month of June, than almost any other month. That's, Andy's got his busiest times, and Kelsey's got her busiest times, I've got mine, Brian, et cetera, but that's one time when there's a little bit more flexibility. It might be hard to get a good group of teachers together in their summer times when they're often with
And
their
if it's a
families.
board mandated committee, then it has to follow open meeting laws.
That's true, too.
So we have a number of issues that we would have to.
That's real doable, though. It means,
We do it for
Sarah has to post and whatnot.
curriculum,
We've started to do that for curriculum. How many people have showed up from the public?
Just
to-
saying, that's another step.
That's another step, you're right. Yeah, if you were giving us direction to do so, we could flesh out a model of what it would look like a little bit better for more discussion on your part, and then potentially taking it out for a test spin with, in a fun 4-hour meeting, we could do that. Lots of different things we could do, but if you think this is, there's just too many unknowns, let's not do it, great, that's reasonable direction based on, what you've told us so far. If you feel like, let's get a little bit more solid look at what one model of this could look like, so that, when people ask, what time would school start, what time does school get out, how long am I doing this, how long would periods be at the high school, what would transportation look like, et cetera. We could put the work into that.
I like that idea, if we could do it during a time where it's not so taxing on you guys to detract from what you're already working really hard on.
We got plenty of stuff to do over the summer, but it's
I'm sure
less
you just sit
frantic.
there. It's not as, you just.
I'm the exception. My summer is not my summer. That's when new budgets and the audits start. The audit, actually.
It's kind of a high time for Brian.
I say my summer is in November.
We could pull in pieces from Brian as we need to, but.
Oh, no,
there'd
I'd be
less of
available.
it,
It's
yeah.
just,
You recommend for his.
Let's take that, so we're kind of saying, don't table it. We're doing more work. We're asking for a little bit more of a deeper dive in June.
I just think a lot of people would be apt, once you put out more of what you flesh out, what you think it would really look like, it might affect some of their way
Sure.
they voted.
Agreed.
Yeah, people said as
Sometimes
much in the
miss-
survey, didn't
yep.
they?
Yeah.
Just jumping like, ooh, 4-day week sounds great. Ooh, no, I don't, this is not what I wanted at
Yeah,
all.
7:30 to 5 is different when you know that's the schedule versus, ooh, I got a 3-day weekend.
That's exactly right.
To be
There's
fair,
so
it did
many things,
say
some
exactly that
balls.
at the top of the page that was linked to, but
It's different when you see that daily schedule.
I agree.
Yeah,
All right, we'll spend some time over the summer.
We made it all the way to
Come out with a model for you.
Brett, you like these short meetings, bud?
Yes. I know. We promised you short meetings, and we have not delivered yet.
You have not delivered.
We used to
Maybe it's
start.
Brett and I that are causing the problem, because we sure do
There's
meet a
no
lot.
question, this is the most thoughtful board that we've had in years.
We used to start at 6 and go to 10 in mid-2000s.
Thank you for starting at 5. We may need to move to.
We still have 2 agenda items.
Yeah. So everybody can read the agenda items, right? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
All right. Are you motioning? Motion to adjourn?
Brett gives
So
you
moved.
both.
All right, so moved.
He's
All
gonna
right.
first and
We're
second.
adjourning.
Adjourned. Thank you.